Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk on a Monday afternoon, and a very special edition in the sense that we are in our basements doing this show today on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and on our video stream on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, and on our Facebook page, WIBW News. Dan Lucero and Brendan Rosinski with you for the next 3 hours. We're like the Postal Service. Rain, sleet, snow, hail, a record-setting snowstorm in Northeast Kansas won't keep us from bringing you 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon. Though it did, quite obviously perhaps, keep us from getting to the radio station proper. So we are on remote location at our own homes this afternoon. Though I was able to shovel out today, Brendan. I have not left the house or tried to leave the house, but I did get some shoveling done. And let me tell you something. This is how I can tell that my dad's strength is starting to kick in, because I had a lot of stamina, a lot of upper body strength, was really clearing out the snow, and we did. If you are not in Northeast Kansas and listening to the program today, you may not be aware that Topeka just saw its third highest single-day snowfall in history yesterday at just over 14 inches of snow. So that's what I was dealing with in my driveway, but I got it cleared out. It took me about an hour and a half, had a shower afterwards, but I feel good. And I feel like all that hauling around my gigantic son, Asher, who turned 7 months old today, happy 7-month-old birthday to my son, is really starting to pay some dividends.
And happy 1 month anniversary or birthday to my daughter, who's 1 month old
right.
today.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly 6 months. That's too funny. So, that's nice. I'm glad you were able to shovel out a little bit. We haven't. We are completely inundated with snow, and I'm not going to dox myself on this radio show / YouTube, but I live close enough to one of the many Kansas highways and byways that is not open, that it's kind of difficult for me to go anywhere whatsoever. So good thing my wife went to the grocery store this weekend, because otherwise we might be going hungry or just like eating snow to survive for the next few days. So yeah, we're still inundated. There is absolutely nowhere for me to go. And we noticed yesterday for the first time in this basement, we have a little thermometer over here in our utility room. It is below 60 degrees inside our basement, so it's a little bit cold. But we're good. We're hanging in there. We're alive. And maybe it'll be like the second ice age. We can go start hunting caribou for food soon.
Hopefully you don't have to resort to that, though. I am dangerously low on coffee. Like, I think I got 2 more mornings where I can have coffee. I need that mud, brother. It's entirely vital to my day-to-day function, and I got about 2 days left before that gets to be its own emergency. Speaking of emergencies, maybe you folks heard this or saw this or became aware of this last night, again, if you're up in Northeast Kansas. And if it feels like we're dragging our feet and doing 580 Snow Talk today, you'll understand that we're not in a hurry to talk Chiefs football today, just because there's not a whole hell of a lot to say about the Chiefs. We'll get to sports. We promise we will. But were you aware that such a thing called a civil danger warning existed? Had you ever heard of that before?
No, I was not aware. I saw the same notification you did from the radio station, the folks at the emergency alert system, and I've never seen that before. That is brand new to me. Although I get it, man. Like, it's nasty. I was driving to Emporia on Saturday for Washburn basketball. More on that in the good, the bad, and the ugly later on in the show. And I was down there, and like on the way down, the roads were totally fine. But the rain was freezing. It was freezing on my windshield as I was driving. So I was glad that I had the defroster running the whole time. Otherwise, I would have been driving blind. And then the way back already, like, okay, I took it slow. I was safe. No skidding off the road this time. But like, okay, if I was going anything over 51 miles an hour on the turnpike, like, I'd be face down in a ditch right now. It was treacherous. That was before we even got the nasty stuff. So whatever it was, civil, whatever the wording was, you just had it. I'm glad they sent one out, because we really needed one this weekend.
Yeah, so of course the initial reporting was it was going to start to get bad on Saturday, and there was a snow Saturday. We got all the snow on Sunday, of course, but Saturday you could tell looking outside that, like, the street I lived on, for example, you could have gotten a game of ice hockey together on the street. I went to just take something out to my trash can, And all the way to my trash can from my house, it's underneath an overhang. So dry sidewalk, and I walked and I put the trash in the trash can, and I'm coming back to the door, and there is a little bit of the top step on our little stoop out front, our front door, that is exposed, and my foot got on that, and I about tore my groin. It would have been very bad if my leg had gotten any further out from under me. God knows how that could have gone for me. So that was when I knew. This was about midday Saturday. Oh yeah, the ice is going to be a problem when it snows over it tomorrow. Yeah, this is going to be bad. I did not know it was going to be civil danger warning bad. That sounded like something like
Civil
I got
danger, yeah.
civil danger warning. I got that on my phone. Like, what in the Walking Dead is this? Like, are there zombies? Like, what is happening here? Apparently, the civil danger warning exists, but it's only been used by the emergency alert system like half a dozen times ever. There was a bad snowstorm in southern Wisconsin in 2011 where it was used. There was a snowstorm in Peoria, Illinois in 2022. There was some flooding after a particularly nasty storm in Arkansas in, I want to say, 2019. There was an active shooter situation in a small Nebraska town near Hastings where it was used. But that's it. Like, civil danger warning is not one that comes across very, very often, and particularly not for a whole state, because that's what it was. It was a civil defense or civil danger warning has been issued for all of Kansas. So, folks, we share this anecdote by way of saying we hope that you were able to ride out this storm. We hope that you are safe. We hope that you have not had to go anywhere today.
Also, we should note this: the real cruelty of it. It happened on the sun came down on a Sunday, or the snow came down on a Sunday. NFL Sunday, week 18. There are games all day from noon until 10:30, 11 o'clock. Games. It happened on probably the worst day of scheduled games, maybe of my entire life. Like, there was barely any consequence at all. And the Broncos stomping the Chiefs JV squad pretty much negated any of the actual drama that could have happened during the day. And yeah, that's the NFL Sunday we got. We couldn't even enjoy the games like we normally would, all snowed in, which was unfortunate. And again, that included a farce of a Chiefs game. They shouldn't have even made the trip. It was not. That game was worth anyone's time except for the Denver Broncos and George Payton being able to buy himself 2 more years as their GM. Like, that's it.
Yeah, like we talked about on our instant reaction yesterday, that game meant the world to Bronco fans, and it meant the world to the Denver Broncos, and it meant nothing, less than nothing to the Chiefs. I bet there were some folks on that sideline, maybe Patrick Mahomes, maybe Travis Kelce, who were looking around each other, said, we spent 4 hours on the tarmac at MCI on Saturday for this, to get on a plane and go watch, like, to call that a preseason level game plan is offensive to the concept of the preseason, honestly. Like, I've seen, like, Patrick Mahomes threw the behind the back pass in a preseason game. Like, the Chiefs take preseason games more seriously than they took that game yesterday. And it ends up, obviously, a very consequential win for the Broncos, gets them into the postseason for the first time since 2015. It's also like historic in the sense that it is the worst Chiefs loss in the Andy Reid era by point differential, and it also makes the final point differential for the Chiefs look less than pretty, which it wasn't all that great looking to begin with in relation to the other AFC contenders. But again, none of that stuff matters. The stuff that matters for the Chiefs is they are healthy. They've got 1 more week where they don't have to play football, and then it is 1 win away from resuming the Arrowhead Invitational in the AFC Championship game. We are going to talk about that game, as far as there are things to talk about with regards to the Chiefs' 38-0 loss in Denver yesterday afternoon. We'll talk a lot more about what went on in Week 18 of the NFL season, because it wasn't, as you said, it was a gross schedule of games, but there were lots of things that were decided. The playoff field is set. Super Wild Card Weekend. They're not calling it Super Wild Card Weekend. You notice they've kind of gone away from that phrasing?
No, I did not. I have put Super Wild Card Weekend on like 19 different things today. Now I feel very.
Yeah, it felt like they went away from that particular verbiage. But yeah, so it is Wild Card Weekend, and it's all set. We'll talk about that. We'll get into Black Monday in the NFL, which has not been quite as I guess voluminous. That's not a great word to use here, but bear with me. When it comes to the firings of head coaches today, we've only had 2 coaches get the guillotine today. A couple of them notable for not getting the guillotine. A couple of general managers noteworthy not getting the guillotine on what is called Black Monday across the NFL. We'll talk about the coaches who did not survive today and what is to come for their respective organizations as we look ahead. Also, the man who had mastered Patrick Mahomes in Cincinnati is no longer their defensive coordinator. And I think that is fascinating. I am very interested to see what happens with Lou Anarumo moving forward. We'll get to all of that on the show today. No Matt Verderam today. He's not able to join us because, again, we're not in studio. That should be obvious if you're listening to us. If you're watching us on the YouTube stream, it's obvious. But if you're listening to us today on 580 WIBW, it's a remote broadcast, so you get what you get. And we appreciate you hanging out with us on this day. But obviously, we're not able to get to our phones, so no guest today. Matt, I talked to him earlier today, gracious enough to reschedule. He'll join us on tomorrow's program, so we'll have a couple of great guests on tomorrow's show. We'll reunite with Michael Swain. Been a couple of weeks since we talked to Swain, and then we'll talk to Matt Verderam as well on tomorrow's program. But lots of NFL to get to as the dust settles on the 2024 regular season, and the playoff field is set for the upcoming playoffs. We'll also talk some college hoops on today's show. KU with the largest road win in Big 12 history yesterday, a 51-point onslaught against UCF. I have a take about Flory Badunga, and you might have to check me on it, Brendan. I will trust you to check me if I'm talking out of school or if I'm getting too big for my britches. But I have a Flory Badunga take that I am going to share when we get around talking KU. Also, K-State played on Saturday, had a 6-point lead with 3 minutes left, didn't score again, lost by 1. The kind of loss that you can stomach a lot easier when you have 9 or 10 in the win column instead of just 7 at this stage in the season. So we'll get there as well. As a tough K-State loss occurred in Fort Worth. So we got some college hoops that we'll get to on the show today, plus everything else you've come to expect from a Monday show. Good, bad, ugly coming up here in just a little bit. We got 2 new stories on what is wrong with you. Got our 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up. Royals made an under-the-radar move yesterday that I think is really interesting. We're going to talk about that later on in the show as well. And again, as promised, lots of Chiefs stuff to get to on today's program. We will interact with you on the show throughout today if you are watching on the YouTube live stream. Again, the channel is 580 Sports Talk. If you're rocking with us on YouTube today, 580 Sports Talk is the channel, and there is a live chat feature in the browser or on the mobile app where you can chat with us today, and we certainly appreciate you doing so throughout the program today. We've also got the text line. We will be able, or should be able, to access the app that gives us a chance to read your text today, and we'll do that as we go along. The text line is 785-272-9429. That is 785-272-9429. All right, Chiefs Broncos. Chiefs mailed it in. Let's call it what it is. That was a game in which the Chiefs put forth an effort befitting a team that just wanted to get to the end of the game with no significant injuries to anybody important. And they largely did. Shamari Connor left the game with a shoulder injury, but Andy Reid didn't sound too concerned. I would imagine he'll be just fine, ready to go for the postseason here in a couple of weeks. It allowed the Broncos to dominate the game. It allowed Bo Nix to look like the second coming of Drew Brees. It allowed him to take a victory lap at an excited Mile High Stadium yesterday afternoon as the Broncos clinched a playoff berth for the first time since they won Super Bowl 50 back in 2015. And all those things are nice for them, but that's not who we're here to talk about. We're talking about the Chiefs, and by way of talking about the Chiefs, we have to note that there are a lot of bad takes out there circulating about whether or not the Chiefs should have at least tried a little harder on Sunday to make that a competitive game. They had no interest in making it a competitive game. It was pretty obvious. Like, you've got a little bit of pride, but at the same time, that game plan was non-competitive, and Carson Wentz was non-competitive, and a lot of the guys playing extended offensive line snaps were not real competitive. So at the end of the day, how can you really have expected that game to have really been a competitive contest? So I don't think that it's fair to say that the Chiefs owed it to the Bengals or the Dolphins or even the Broncos to be more competitive on Sunday. The only team they owed anything to was the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs accomplished what the Chiefs set out to accomplish. Get guys some reps, get through the game without any major injuries, give your best players another week off after the most grueling late season stretch of play that any Super Bowl contender has ever faced. 3 games in 11 days, that late in the season. To get the opportunity to rest, to put your feet up, that's what you play for. And the Chiefs earned that right. They earned the right to sim to end on yesterday's game, and good for them for taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, it sucked, man. What a waste of 3 hours. That was not barely worth the breath we're expelling to talk about it right now. The most intriguing part of the game by far was to see if DeAndre Hopkins would actually get a snap after they made.
Having a little trouble with Brendan. Again, we are
I don't even
on
know if you
remote
can see me on
location
the
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see you all pause, Brendan. But yeah, you were talking about DeAndre Hopkins, and he had an opportunity for some incentives to be hit in his contract, and he never got around to it. But yeah, it was a waste of 3 hours. Mark H puts it in the YouTube live chat. Glad I didn't watch it. Yeah, we watched it so you didn't have to. And what we saw was 3 hours of not very good football from the Chiefs. But it was vanilla football. It was football with the idea that you might be able to put your feet up, not get anybody hurt, and move on and live to fight another day. And that's where the Chiefs put themselves. And again, that's what you battle for the right to do. Right? If you're the Chiefs, you battle all season for the right to get that 1 seed, to get the bye so you don't have to play in the first round of the playoffs. And the earlier you clinch it, the more of an advantage it can be, because you don't have to put your best guys at risk. You don't have to put yourself in a situation where you're like the Green Bay Packers and you're without Christian Watson now for the playoffs after he got hurt on Sunday. You're not in a position like the Baltimore Ravens, who lost Zay Flowers in all likelihood for round 1 of the playoffs. You're not in position like the Detroit Lions, who lost Terrion Arnold to an injury. Now, it sounds like Arnold's going to be okay in 2 weeks, but still, that was a risky situation that he put himself in. And you play all season to earn the right to not have to do that in week 18. And the Chiefs earned that right. They took full advantage of their right. And if it bothers the Bengals and their fans, and it hosed the Bengals, it cost them their best chance of making the playoffs, tough beans. The Bengals didn't control the things they could control well enough, and the things that they couldn't control didn't fall their way. Tough break. Don't start 4-8. Next time, don't lose to the Patriots at home. And if you want to make the playoffs, be a serious team for more than 7 weeks, and you might have found yourself in the postseason this time around, instead of having to rely on a team that had no interest in being reliable with their performance on Sunday. I have zero sympathy for the Bengals. I have less than zero sympathy for the Bengals.
No, there's no reason to have any amount of sympathy for the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, which angle do you want to take this from? The notion, let's start with just this season, okay? The Chiefs have already beaten the Bengals, and that was many, many months ago. And then if you want to look just at like the composition of these two teams, this is not a good Bengals team. It's an elite quarterback, and it is probably 2 elite receivers. Football's not played 3-on-3. This isn't lunch recess on the playground with you and 5 friends, and that's how you have to make teams. Like, that's not how this works. The Bengals might win the Super Bowl if it was a 3-on-3 league. If you just had Burrow throwing jump balls to Chase and Higgins all the time, yeah, that's the best team in the entire NFL. That's not how football works. They have an okay offensive line, an okay running game, and one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I'm double-checking it right now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they finished the year 26th in expected points added overall as a defense. 27th, even one spot worse. They were worse than the 49ers, who had 1 million injuries. That's a bad team overall. The defense is terrible. They have not earned a spot in the playoffs. Ending the year on 5 straight wins, that's impressive. Like you said, maybe don't lose to the Patriots. Maybe don't screw up at the end of the Chiefs game in the first place, and you would be in the playoffs already. And then the notion, and I saw so many people who I otherwise thought were smart say nonsense like, oh, well, the Chiefs took a dive to avoid playing the dreaded Bengals. The dreaded Bengals, who beat the Chiefs in one playoff game 3 seasons ago, didn't even win the whole thing over a Rams team that I thought was worse than the Chiefs. And then they've since not won any meaningful playoff games against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs have won 2 Super Bowls. Why would they be scared of the Bengals? A team that fired their DC, probably shouldn't have, fired a bunch of assistant coaches, probably shouldn't have. You know why? Because their roster stinks. Because Mike Brown is a notorious and legendary cheapskate who, instead of saying, you know what, Jesse Bates is probably going to be a second team or better all pro for the next 3 years, but we don't need that guy. We're going to replace him with Geno Stone off the scrap heap. Admittedly, I was wrong about that signing. I thought he'd be better. And a bunch of rookie, like, weird hybrid players like, oh yeah, Dax Hill will be fine. No, he won't be. You know Jesse Bates is elite. You know these other players are really good. Remember when Trey Hendrickson asked for a trade and they were like, no, because we don't want to deal with it, but otherwise we wouldn't keep you either? Like, it's just an incredibly cheap team with a bad overall roster with 3 legitimately elite talents.
Yeah, and
Higgins is close.
Yeah, it's not a good enough roster. And if it had been, they would have made the playoffs comfortably because they did get arguably an MVP caliber season from Joe Burrow and an offensive player of the year caliber season from Jamar Chase, who won the wide receiver triple crown. And Trey Hendrickson, I think, is going to win the defensive player of the year. It's going to be him or Patrick Surtain. And I think it might be Hendrickson because he finished on a really high note with that 3.5 sack performance on Saturday against the Steelers. That's wild to think that they had that level of performance at the top of their roster and the rest of their roster wasn't good enough to float it enough to make the playoffs. That's a failure on their part and a failure that a lot of people have to wear. And the Chiefs are not one of those people. The Chiefs do not have to wear the Bengals' failure, not one tiny bit. They had no obligation to anyone but themselves, and they fulfilled their obligation to themselves to the NFL by showing up and being on the field for 60 minutes of football on Sunday, for providing an opponent for the Denver Broncos. Even if they were NPCs for the better part of that game, that was all it needed to be for the Chiefs. We'll talk a little bit later on about some of the individual Chiefs players who had an opportunity to maybe make an impression in that game with the opportunity they were given. Did anyone make a positive impression? Did anyone maybe hurt their chances of being a short or a long-term solution for the Chiefs? We'll get to that later on in the show. We got a lot more NFL to talk about, but when we come back after our first break here on 580 Sports Talk, we'll do the good, the bad, and the ugly from the sports weekend that was. That's coming up. We're just getting started on this Monday snowed-in edition of 580 Sports Talk. The good, the bad, the ugly from the weekend that was. You do it every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzynski, what was your good?
Well, pretty easily, it is the events that happened at historic White Auditorium in Emporia. Washburn basketball. What a weekend against Emporia State. Ichabod's hadn't played in 2 whole weeks. You were there in Warrensburg back on December 21st, Dan, when the men took down UCM and the women fell in a really competitive game. The teams hadn't played then in 2 weeks. You worry a little bit about rust. You had the holiday break in there. The men played first because that was the TV game, and they scored more points than they had ever scored against Emporia State before. 222nd meeting all time, 105 points. That's a new record. They just beat the brakes off of Emporia State, a team that's young, that's new. They'll be better by the end of the year, but that was a satisfying win. How about the women? Second time in a row they've played against Emporia State. Last time it was on senior day last season. Then again, it was just 2 days ago on Saturday. Down double digits in the second half, only to come back and win. Awesome, awesome, awesome effort. Brooke Gomez, freshman point guard, was tremendous. Peyton Sturck hit some big free throws late. It was so cool to watch them come back against a rival again. So you get a men's women's sweep over Emporia State. That's a shoe-in for the good.
Yeah, I previously, in my capacity as Jake LeBon's color analyst for Washburn basketball for a few years, I hated going to that building because dumb stuff would happen to Washburn. They'd lose on half-court buzzer beaters. They'd lose because some rando would come off the bench and hit 8 threes. They'd give big leads away and just melt down in the late stages. I began to believe that White Auditorium was cursed. I really and truly did. So for Washburn's men and women to go into that building and leave with wins in the fashion that they got those 2 wins, that made my heart happy. That was also good for me to see. Also, my good, I didn't have to go out in that storm. So that is definitely a good. My bad would be those like 1.5 foot snow drifts out in front of my house that I had to shovel this morning. What about your bad?
So when I was driving home from Emporia, the roads were getting icy. I was very safe. I stopped first, warmed up the car while I ate Brahms, number 2 with the chocolate shake, of course. Shout out to the Emporia Brahms on Highway 50. And no one was out because of the weather. No one was out. I drove right through the drive-thru. It was awesome. I've never had such a quick experience there before. Okay, now for the bad. So I get in the road. I'm driving safely. It's fine. But because the rain was freezing and was messing up my windshield, I had to keep running the defroster on the front windshield my entire drive. I had it on high. I had the temperature turned all the way up to keep it melting so I could see. Okay, fine. But then it's hot. I got this hot air blowing in my face the whole way. So I think, you know what? I'm just going to crack the window just a little bit. I'm going to crack it just a smidge, get a little cool air in here. It's going to help me out a whole lot. We'll be fine. So I did that, and it felt great. Felt good. Drove all the way up the turnpike with it. Got to Highway or Interstate 470. Circled around Topeka. Drove home. Great, awesome. What wasn't awesome was I forgot to close it. You might remember I got home late Saturday night, and Sunday I'm walking around in the living room. It's like 1:30 in the afternoon. I think it was right around halftime of Bears Packers. Ugh, you want to talk about bad. And I'm looking out the window with my daughter, and I said, yeah, look at the snow. Isn't it nice? Oh, my God. And I handed her off to my wife, and I ran outside and had to shovel. Thankfully, it was only open a crack, so it wasn't all the way full, but I had to shovel the entire passenger side feet area, the seat, the area under the seat, and part of the back seat were all covered in snow, and I had to wipe it away.
Oh, man, that's tough.
It was
yeah.
And I swear I closed it, and apparently I was wrong. I was just in a hurry to get inside, and yeah, it was tough. That was ugly.
Man, my ugly for the weekend was final 3 minutes for K-State in Fort Worth. Doug McDaniel misses a 1-and-1. David Gasson misses a 1-and-1. Gross possession inside the final minute ends with Doug McDaniel taking a contested jumper. And then the last possession of the game, they did get a decent look and a shot that Doug McDaniel has made, but a tough shot. And he couldn't get it to fall, and the rebound getting batted away as time expired. And a game that K-State should have won and it might have felt like they had stolen given how poorly they shot in the first half, gets away. And a game that, looking at their schedule, I don't think they could really have afforded to lose. They ended up losing in Fort Worth. And the final 3 minutes were really ugly, and 3 for 22 shooting in the first half. That's like me in a 4th grade Aurora Parks and Rec game. That's ugly too.
Yeah, that was unpleasant. I didn't get to catch any of that game. By the way, the part about missing 1-and-1s, do you know how many free throws K-State took in that game?
Not many.
5. They took
Yep.
5 free throws in a 40-minute Big 12 game. What is that?
I will say, and we'll talk about this more coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. A bit of a raw whistle, I thought, for the better part of the night.
Sure.
I thought that there was a friendly whistle for the home team. Not enough to have swung the game, but certainly accounting for the free throw disparity.
Yeah, so that was tough, and you're right. We'll get to that a little bit more next hour. The ugly for me, just an awful weekend for football discourse. Like I couldn't go anywhere. We are both of the age where like the social media component, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, wherever, is like a companion to watching a sporting event, especially a big sporting event. And just everywhere I turned, I was watching the Packers game intently. Obviously, that went terribly. They played like crap. But like everybody having the complete freak out about a game that in the end didn't even matter because Washington won. The whole Chiefs Bengals thing, Bengals fans just wetting themselves over the Chiefs playing Carson Wentz. Like, y'all got to calm down. We should be above this. We should be above having like complete meltdowns over one thing that happens in week 18. Calm down. Just a really bad week for people trying to talk football.
Yeah, you would think we'd be smarter by now, but if I've learned anything, and I've learned very little, but if I've learned anything, it's that, the discourse online is not elevating over time. I said to my wife at one point this weekend, and I was talking about something entirely different, that the internet was a mistake. And I feel like sometimes the internet is a mistake. And one of those times is too many people have a platform that aren't smart enough to have one. Just be completely honest about it. But we'll take a timeout. When we come back, the rest of NFL Week 18, lots to get to, including a very impressive performance from a Detroit team last night and really the game of the week, and some other things, too, that we'll pick apart from Week 18, the final regular season week of 2024. That is coming up next on this Monday, snow day edition of 580 Sports Talk. It's 3:42 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero, Brendan Dworzinski hanging out with you on this Monday from our respective homes. The civil danger warning we were put under actually persists until tonight at 6 o'clock. It was a 24-hour civil defense warning. So that's where we're at. We're just hanging out, waiting out this civil danger warning, and we expect to be in the studio tomorrow. Here's hoping, anyhow. I did all that shoveling for nothing if I end up not being able to get back to the studio tomorrow. That would be extremely frustrating. But Week 18, the NFL season is in the books, and we'll talk a little bit more about the playoff matchups as we go along this week on the program. Obviously, the marquee game was the Sunday night game for the number one seed in the NFC and the NFC North title, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. And the Lions, you're familiar with the part in Monty Python where the Black Knight keeps losing limbs and keeps trying to continue the sword fight. Just a flesh wound.
Just a minor flesh wound.
Yes. The Lions are like that, except if the Black Knight were actually winning the fight. Like, it doesn't matter how many people they lose, they keep winning. They really are kneecap biters, ankle biters. Like that is who they are. Their identity is so secure, and they are a team not dissimilar to the Chiefs, where the big moments in games seem to always go their way. The tipping point plays in games seem to always favor the Lions. And at some point, that stops being luck. That starts being about preparation. That starts being about who you are. And we got there with the Chiefs a couple of years ago. And I think we're about there with the Lions, really. I mean, they don't have the championship, obviously, to be the ultimate bona fide. But they're just so impressive that they've continued to play at this high level, even with so many guys lost to injury on the defensive side of the ball. That, and it was a Sam Darnold in a big game. And the reason that we have been slow to believe in the Vikings all season long was we didn't trust that guy in a big game. And we saw last night why you don't trust Sam Darnold in a big game.
Yeah, the Lions were able to create a ton of pressure, and that's it. I had a buddy text me just a group message during the game and say, what the heck happened? I mean, he's been so good, and he has. And I think Kevin O'Connell is a tremendous coach, tremendous enough that Jay Glazer of Fox Sports said during the pregame show yesterday that there are a bunch of teams who are interested in trading for Kevin O'Connell this year. So we'll see how that goes. I think he's done a great job with Sam Darnold. I think Darnold has played really well. That being said, the bugaboo his entire career has been if you get pressure on him, you are going to create problems. And I do think there were some moments where he just missed throws that he should have made, pressure or not. I think there were some opportunities where the Lions really made some impressive plays defensively. I don't think Justin Jefferson played his best or most focused game of his career. But this Lions team is, I was posting about this on Blue Sky last night, Dan. I just don't know what the end of the line is for them, because I keep feeling like, they lost Aiden Hutchinson, they lost Ali McNeil, they've lost every one of their starting linebackers, they've lost a bunch of cornerbacks, Carlton Davis. Now it looks like they're going to have another injury to Ted McMillan, not Tedero McMillan. Who am I? Fix my name here.
Terrion Arnold.
Terrion Arnold, thank you. Not Tedero, Terrion Arnold. Tedero McMillan is going to be a top 5 pick in this NFL draft. What a crappy draft this is going to be. Anyway, that's beside the point. It keeps working, and I think that's a credit offensively to Ben Johnson. They lose David Montgomery, who was such a big part of their offense. They've barely missed a beat. Jahmyr Gibbs, it turns out, is even better than we thought he was already. And Aaron Glenn and that defense, they got some lucky breaks. They probably got a favorable whistle at home in that moment last night. But it keeps working. They've got a bunch of no-names up front, and they're generating tons of pressure against a Vikings line that's as good as it's been in, 15 years, if not longer. The Vikings have had bad O-lines as long as I can remember. They're a good team. They're the favorites right now at most sports books to win it all. I totally understand why. I do think that at some point this is going to come to an end, because you can't go an entire playoffs playing an entire defense that's essentially depth pieces plus 2 safeties. But they keep proving me wrong, and I give them a lot of credit. I hate to do it, but I give them a lot of credit because they've put together a machine, especially on the offensive side of things.
And somebody's got to win the NFC, right? Like somebody has to win that division, and it may as well, or somebody's got to win that conference and go to the Super Bowl. May as well be the Lions, who've never done it before. They get the bye. The other NFC playoff matchups, it'll be the Eagles, the 2 seed. They get the Packers. The 3 seed Buccaneers get the Commanders, and the 4 seed Rams, winners of the NFC West, play the 5 seed Vikings. So that was what was at stake in that game. Vikings are 14-3. They got to go on the road and play a 10-7 Rams team. The Commanders 12-5 got to go on the road and play a 10-7 Buccaneers team. You're going to hear a lot about how unfair that is. It's not. It's been this way forever. Win your division if you want a home game. Those are the rules. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, I understand why a lot of people they weren't the best team. The Vikings should get a home playoff game. College football is going to steer into this at some point. We're just going to end up with 2 Big Ten and 2 SEC teams getting it's going to be Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, 2 of those 3, and Alabama, Georgia, and Florida or Tennessee or Auburn or whoever as the top 4 seeds in the college football playoff forever going forward. But in the NFL, I like that they're sticking with this. Like the NFC North, that division dates back 100 years. Like the Bears and Packers have been playing for 100 years. The Lions since the early 1930s. Even the Vikings have been playing against those teams now for 65 years. Like that means something to win that division. Same thing with the AFC North, the AFC West, the NFC South. It's gross, but those teams hate each other and you play each other so often. It should mean something to win those divisions. I even saw a Packers reporter yesterday tweet something to the effect of, had the Packers been in the NFC South, they would have won the division with their record. And I thought, well, on one hand, they would have had a better record because they would have gotten 6 games against either the Falcons or Saints and the Panthers and this, all the, the Bucks or whoever. Bucks are good, but they probably would have won more games. Packers went 2-4 in their division. But by the same token, that wouldn't mean anything if Green Bay was in that division. It means something that they are in the NFC North. Just like for the Bucks to pull it out and beat to win over the Falcons, they didn't play each other, but to take that division from the Falcons on the last day of the season, that means something. So I like that the divisions have meaning. Compare that, Dan, to a sport like the NBA. Can you, I can name every NFL team in which division they're in. I could go 1 through 32 right now, division by division. Can you name the NBA divisions, either what they're called or who is in them? They mean nothing. They're completely irrelevant. I like that they have meaning now.
No, I think that's a good argument, and I do. I'm all for it. I'm all for the system being what the system is, because it gave us a beastquake. It gave us the 7-9 Seahawks beating the defending champion Saints because they got to play at home, even though they were 7-9 because they won their division. And
you're right too. The ultimate shutdown trump card in the argument. Well, they should have gotten a home playoff game. They should have been top seed. Win more. You have just as many chances, and the NFL, every roster is so. The discrepancy in talent between the Lions and the Chiefs and even the Titans and the Patriots, generally speaking, it's really damn close. Every single one of the dudes on all of those teams were a top 3 player at their college, if not better, in recent memory, some of them all time. There's a ton of talent around the league. Now the Patriots, that's a crappy roster. The Titans, crappy roster relative to the NFL. We saw the Raiders beat the Ravens this year. The gap is never all that big. You've got chances to go win and make it to the playoffs. If you didn't get the spot you want, Bengals, this goes for you too. You should have won more. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, win your games. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows what it's going to be when the season goes on. If you want a home game, you should win your division. Be better against your divisional opponents and take care of your business. The AFC playoff matchups, I love that the Saturday 4:30 Eastern game is the Texans again. It's so funny. They have been to the playoffs 8 times, and they have played in that time slot. 8 times. That is the Texans slot. Saturday, 4:30 Eastern. Every single year when the Texans make the playoffs, you bet your behind they're going to play in that time slot. They play the Chargers. The Chargers are going to wreck them. I think that's who. We'll explore this as we go along this week, but I think the Chiefs are going to dig into their Charger film. I think that's who the Chiefs are going to end up playing. Ravens, Steelers. Steelers are completely cooked. The Russell Wilson renaissance was fun while it lasted. It is Jover for Russell Wilson.
I could take us to 6 talking about the Steelers. They're infuriating. Tomlin is a good coach. I think Arthur Smith, honest to God, has done a really good job coordinating that offense given what he has. But look at what they have. Their offensive line is finally competent again. Russell Wilson can run like 3 concepts, and all 3 of them are some version of a deep ball. They have one decent wide receiver. Mike Williams is nothing. Calvin Austin is a punt returner, and he's not even good at that. They've got George Pickens, who every single play, you have to A, trust that George Pickens is going to bail out some 30-yard deep ball from Russell Wilson with an acrobatic catch, and also at the same time, B, trust that he's not going to punch a player on another team on the exact same snap. That is no way to build an offense. Najee Harris is probably the worst runner ever to have 3,000-yard seasons. Like, get some talent, please. I am begging you. Get some talent. Actually be competitive. They are a brutal watch. And they might not even be the team with the worst vibes in the playoffs because the Texans are right there with them.
Yeah, those 2 teams both look like they're ready for the season to be over. Broncos-Bills is, of course, the other wild card game.
I'm excited for that one, man. That's going to be fun.
You know, I think the Bronco defense can put a little pressure on Josh Allen. I just don't know they can do it for 60 minutes. We got to take a break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this first hour of 580 Sports Talk right after this. Wrapping up this final hour, or this first hour, rather, of 580 Sports Talk. We got 2 more hours of this. So we appreciate you being with us, whether you're hanging out with us on the YouTube stream, 580 Sports Talk, or you're listening 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, or 580WIBW.com. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, we'll talk some college hoops. KU, a big win yesterday, a lopsided win, a record-setting win, in fact, while K-State dropped a tough one in Fort Worth on Saturday. We'll get to that. We'll have two new stories compete. Our first, What is Wrong with You of the new year. So very excited for our first two stories for 2025. In case anyone missed it, Dog Looks Like a Panda was our champion of 2024. We'll also talk about Black Monday in the NFL. It's what they call the day after the end of the regular season when typically a lot of coaches get fired, but only two have gotten the axe today. We'll talk about the ones who did get fired and the ones who didn't. That's all still to come on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. did it. Hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk on a Monday. Not a victory Monday for the Kansas City Chiefs. Not even close, but who cares? Chiefs rested their starters, played their backups, lost by a billion. Nobody cares but Bronco fans who were grateful to have made the playoffs for the first time in 9 years, whether they got in through the back door or not. Trust me, when it's been that long since you've made the playoffs, any door, the back door or otherwise, any door will suffice when it's been that long. So Bronco fans enjoyed the game yesterday. You, in all likelihood, if you're a Chiefs fan, either did not enjoy it or found something else to do. So we chat a bit about it to open the show. We'll get into it a little bit more later on as well as we enter hour number 2 of the program today on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com. And on our YouTube video stream on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk is the channel. Also on Facebook at WIBW News.
I want to make sure we
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Dan, to cut you off during the introductions. I did want to say real quick during the news break at the top of the hour, wanted to give a shout out to listener Ryan, who's checking in on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube today. He is right there with us about the playoff setup. I don't understand the obsession with changing the CFP system or the NFL playoffs just because you don't like who gets a bye. If you win your division or conference, you should get an advantage. Could not agree with Ryan more. He is 100% correct about that.
So we appreciate all of you who are weighing in today, either on the YouTube live chat, which you can join if you are watching the show on our 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel on your web browser or your mobile device. You can also text the program. If you're listening the old school way on the radio, you can text us. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Again, that is 785-272-9429. He is Brendan Orzinski. I am Dan Lucero. Just the two of us today from our respective homes, unable to make it into the station and up Huntoon Hill to get in the studio today due to the snowstorm that rolled through Topeka. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Chicago weather, Brendan, but I know like lake effect, snow and everything is a deal. Were blizzards, were snow events like the one we got in northeast Kansas, really all of Kansas yesterday, were snow events like that fairly common for you growing up?
Not like this. I mean, 14 inches or 15, whatever it ended up being officially. We didn't get that all too often. I mean, we get good snows far more often than we get here in Kansas. And out where I was in the suburbs, there wasn't as much lake effect. You'd get a little bit, but not quite as much. I did live through I think it was the third biggest blizzard in Chicago history. It was my sophomore year of high school. It was I think it was February 2011, if I remember correctly. We had 22 inches of snow. I went to a high school that was notorious for never canceling school for snow days, and even our school had to cancel for a couple of days because you couldn't bus kids from, all the stretches of the suburbs for, 22 inches of snow. That was pretty cool. Your front door is blocked from even opening in front of everybody's house. But no, this is, even for me and for my experiences out there, this is pretty intense. I would say this is probably the second or third most I've ever seen at one time.
Yeah, so in Denver, being close enough growing up where I did to the mountains, we would get, and it wasn't an annual thing, but like the ones that stand out there are snowstorms that stand out in the memory. There's the blizzard of 89, there's the blizzard of 03, there was another one we got, I think, it was 03 was the real big one when I was in high school that wiped out a spring break. We got 4 days off of school right before spring break. So that was really awesome because we got 3 feet of snow. So like I've seen big snows like this. So to see yesterday, the reporting again in the Topeka area, it was just over 14 inches of snow recorded, which is the third greatest snowfall for an individual day on record, behind a day in 1900 and a day in 1993. So what that means is that school age kids have never seen this much snow in one day in their lives in Topeka. And like I thought about that thinking, everybody has like that one snowstorm they remember, like the one where it just you couldn't leave the house, and every driveway was a sledding hill, and you got out and you threw snowball fights. You felt like you were in like a Charlie Brown Christmas for real. Everybody has that story, and now for school age kids across this area, this is going to be their story. They're going to talk about the blizzard of 2025, and I think that's pretty cool that we got to experience that.
I would agree with that. No, that's cool. I was thinking about that. That yeah, everybody does have that. That one memory of, oh yeah, well we had this snowstorm. We went out and we sledded on cardboard boxes in the street on that one hilly road. Like that is pretty cool. That you always remember it. You will always remember this snowstorm.
That 2003 snowstorm, the other thing that was cool about the timing, not only was it right before spring break, it was also the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. So I got to stay home and watch basketball instead of being creative about watching basketball in school, which I greatly appreciated. So yeah, good memories. Hopefully everybody stayed safe, was able to remain indoors through the nastiest of it yesterday, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll be out and about. I know that the folks in Topeka running the plows, emergency vehicles, they put in yeoman's work to try and get the major streets plowed. The interstates are back open, and shout out to you. If anybody listening is an emergency vehicle driver, operator, snowplow driver, anybody involved with getting the roads cleared, trying to make it passable in town again after the last 24 hours, huge shout out to you. You guys deserve a ton of credit, guys and gals, for all the work that you put in. Obviously, there are going to still be some things closed tomorrow. TPS 501 is closed tomorrow. Seaman schools are closed tomorrow. Hayden High School is closed tomorrow. For other closings, you can visit our website, 580wibw.com. They'll keep you up to date on everything that is closed going into tomorrow. My dentist office is closed today. I had an appointment and didn't make that. So we'll see when I can get back to the dentist anytime soon. But my dentist texted me, not me personally, one of those mass texts. But yeah, so yeah, a lot of things closed. A lot of things will remain closed tomorrow. For all the latest, go to 580wibw.com. Still to come on the program today, this hour, we got our first round of What Is Wrong With You for the new year. First two What Is Wrong With You stories for 2025. We'll also talk about a day that is circled on the NFL calendar this Monday after the regular season. They call it Black Monday because usually a lot of NFL head coaches are called into the office and their key cards are deactivated, and they're told they need to seek new employment. Only two head coaches were fired today. Gerard Mayo in New England, Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. A lot of coaches survived the axe today in what I thought was a very surprising way. We'll get into some of that later on the show today. Again, you're invited to be a part of the conversation. Get in on the YouTube live chat. If you're watching on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel, you can also join us via the text line, 785-272-9429. But I want to start with some college hoops. Big 12 basketball over the weekend. Both KU and K-State were on the road. We'll start with the game that happened most recently, yesterday afternoon. Hopefully, if you are a KU and a Chiefs fan, you were able to just ignore the Chiefs for 2 hours and watch what KU did to UCF, which I think is illegal in like 9 countries. 99-58, the final score in Orlando. KU just dropped an anvil on the Golden Knights from start to finish. A rematch of last year's meeting when KU lost rather inexplicably in Orlando. They got their lick back. They start this season on a high note after ending last season on the disappointing note with the home loss to West Virginia. I'm going to say something reckless here. I think this is reckless. You can check me, Brendan, if you need to check me. I'm going to say something reckless. I don't know that Bill Self has ever had a better freshman big than Flory Badunga.
I guess the response question to follow up is just what is better? Is it athleticism? Is it actual contributions? Because I see where your argument is coming from. Flory on the floor, complete. Maybe it's just general impact because Flory out there for KU changes everything. It erases so many of the things you don't have, especially when you pair him with Hunter. And it's so funny that KU's bet. I said this the other day after the loss to West Virginia on New Year's Eve. It's hilarious that KU is probably going to be at its best with 2 centers. Like this is, George Mikan's going to roll into Allen Fieldhouse next week, but it's true. Like KU has the offensive touch and skill and all the good stuff that comes with Hunter Dickinson, but he is a limited athlete and a limited defensive player, to say the least. Flory is an incredible athlete. He's got spring. He's a shot blocker. I still think he's very raw, but you can see the instincts are there, and they've gotten better and better and better. And you can erase so many of those problems you have with Hunter. Now, yes, that does eliminate some shooting, but in theory, if you're not also, God forbid, KJ Adams is ever out there as the 3, but if you've got multiple guys out there who can shoot, if it's Zeke Mayo and Rylan Griffin, or AJ Storrs out there, or maybe Diggy Coit is spelling DeJuan Harris, if DeJuan is willing to take a single contested 3-pointer all year, all of a sudden, now you've got bounce inside, you've got scoring inside, you've got a size mismatch who can step out and hit from the mid-range or the occasional 3, and a bunch of shooters. You know what that is? A very modern team that can actually score and actually put up points. And if you're committed to running that, you're going to be really good. The problem is, are you going to be committed to running things like that? And that is where the worry comes from. I thought yesterday, got a great stat line for KJ Adams. Do you know, without looking at the box score, how many times he shot the ball?
I do not. I think I saw him shoot it once.
6. 3 for 6 from the floor. That's great. DeJuan Harris took far too many shots. He shot 13 times and had 11 points. That's a no-go. A little bit worried about that number. But generally speaking, if you're limiting the number of times KJ Adams has to be an offensive contributor for you, great. I will momentarily put a damper on this. Momentarily. I don't think Johnny Dawkins scouted this game. I'm not sure which of his assistants drew the scout for KU. I don't think they did it, because how many times, Dan, the rest of the way, 18 more Big 12 games for Kansas. How many teams do you think are going to play Kansas straight up guarding KJ Adams? Just straight up one-on-one. How many teams are going to do it?
We've seen teams not do it to great positive effect. We saw Creighton refuse to do it, and Mizzou refused to do it, and West Virginia kind of refused to do it.
And it worked, and it really stunted things for the KU offense when he was out there on the floor. UCF just decided to say, yep, roll the ball out, ball up top, let's go. Man-to-man, across the board, lace them up. What? What is this game plan? It was ridiculous. Now, I give KJ a lot of credit. A, I liked his role offensively more, but B, that's probably the best rebounding game of his career. I don't know if it was a career high in rebounds. I don't think it was, but in terms of intensity and energy on the glass, may have been the best rebounding effort day of KJ Adams' career. You need that from him, because if he's not going to score the ball well and he's not going to rebound, what are you doing with a 6'7" 4-man? Like, you can't do anything with that in the Big 12. But if he's giving you something rebounding, and like I was talking about the other day, if you're playing from ahead and you can get out and run in transition and play to his offensive strengths, suddenly he becomes a much more useful player. So I loved a lot of what KU did. It was great to see Rylan Griffin finally make a few shots. AJ Storr also scored a bunch. That was also in garbage time. Like, UCF was just ready to go home. They were ready to get in bed and watch Sunday Night Football by the final few minutes of that game. So there was a lot of good. I still think some things to work on. I don't understand what UCF was doing. UCF entered the game ranked 62nd in KenPom this year. They exited 81st. I've never seen a team drop 19 spots in one game at this level before. That's crazy how badly they played.
Lost by 51. I want to circle back to my thing about Badunga, because
Please.
Every time I look up, he's doing something impactful. Yep. And I just am so fascinated by his skill set. Like, he combines the rim protection that you got from a young, like, we're talking about like freshman bigs. Recent vintage is my best recollection. I've been covering KU basketball better part of 10 years. So I don't have like somebody else who really dove into like the championship team in 08. You might check me in the early days of Bill Self here. But I'm just thinking the last 10 years. There's the rim protection that you got from Udoka Azubuike. There's the ability to finish, and I think an improved ability to finish around the rim that you got from a guy like David McCormick. And there's the ability to guard on the perimeter that Ernest Uday flashed as a freshman. Flory can legit guard 3 through 5 and isn't going to hurt you if he gets stuck on a 2. Now, he did make the bad play, bit on the pump fake, that Javon Small made at the end of the West Virginia game. But sometimes a freshman makes a freshman play. That was a tough spot for a freshman to be in. He is still a freshman after all, and he is still raw. That's the word you used. It's an appropriate one. But every time you look up, he's putting the clamps on somebody. He's throwing a shot into the expensive seats. He's catching down low and gathering and finishing. He doesn't get rushed on offense. A lot of times those big guys, especially young big guys, they get rushed around the basket. He's not rushed. He doesn't appear to be flappable. He gets the ball. He knows exactly what to do with it, where to put it on the square, and he scores. I am so blown away by how good he is already. And I think we're talking about a really, really special talent here for the Jayhawks. And playing him next to Hunter Dickinson, it does. It unlocks Hunter because you can't really play two true back-to-the-basket bigs. Well, Hunter doesn't have to be a back-to-the-basket big to score. He can step out. He can make that 12-foot jumper. He can even knock down a three if you're not careful. And he doesn't have to shoulder as much of a load defensively because you have Badunga's rim protection as well. I think the two of them make each other better when they're out there on the floor. So I'm really excited to see where that combination goes. I would also want to point out that I thought Shaquille Moore had a nice showing. And I think that he is going to as he gets more comfortable, I think he's going to be a rotation piece that really fits and really helps unlock his teammates along with him.
He is a really good defensive player. We knew that. He's a former finalist for the, Naismith Defensive Player of the Year award. We know how good he is defensively. He's got some sauce on offense, too. Did you see that no-look jumping assist he had midway through the second half yesterday? He's got a little spice to his game, and that's something that KU needs. And I don't mean this as a criticism of DeJuan Harris, as our pal CJ Moore has said about him before, CJ from The Athletic. DeJuan Harris has the slowest heartbeat in college basketball. He is never rattled. He's always calm. He's got his limitations as an offensive player, but as a creator, as a defender, he is always calm, even-keeled. That's great. But I kind of like Shaq Moore is kind of the in-between between DeJuan Harris, which is that guy, and Diggy Coit, who, if you said, hey, Diggy, go get 10 shots on one possession, I think he'd find a way to do it and would do it gladly. Like, he's going to chuck, and he is going to play fast and loose. I think Shaq Moore is a good combination of, he's got the personality, he's got a little sizzle offensively, but he is a lockdown defender too. You don't need him to score a lot, but he can do a little bit of that for you. I think he's going to be a really useful piece, and I think the fact that he's got a little bit of offensive touch is going to help when you're in a low-scoring dogfight of a game and you say, hey, we've got to have someone who can run the break, but we also need someone who can lock down the best wing on the other team. You throw number 0 out there. So I really like that piece, and I'm glad that he's been able to kind of hit the ground running. I know he was sort of getting acclimated those first few games he was back, but to be integrated and ingratiated in this team as quickly as he has been, I think that's really positive for Shaq and really positive for this KU backcourt.
On Saturday, Kansas State lost a 1-point game at TCU. They were up 62-56 with 3:14 to play, and then they didn't score again the rest of the game. I think in a vacuum, what you take away from this from K-State is real simple. It's 1, make shots, and 2, don't miss so many shots. It really came down to being a make or miss game for K-State. They were 3 for 22 from 3 in the first half. And watching that game, again, on just taking every possession by itself, you watch them shoot and say, well, that's not forced. That's not a late shot clock look. That's a pretty good look. I mean, they're wing threes. It wasn't a lot of corner threes. Wing threes and straight on threes have a bit of a higher degree of difficulty than the corner threes, but a lot of them are open looks, rhythm looks, guys you want shooting the ball. David Gasson about killed a ball boy with his 3-point attempt, but for the most part, good shots. They were not going in. And after a while, you have to maybe accept that, hey, these aren't going in. We got to get into the paint. We got to make something happen inside. We got to get to the free throw line. We got to see the ball go through the hoop. And they just would not do that in the first half. Brendan Housen kind of bailed him out, hit a couple of big threes, and had them within 3. Honestly, they were within 3 after shooting that poorly at the end of the first half. I thought they were going to win. I was not impressed with TCU. I think outside of Reynolds, that's a really unimpressive team. I don't know how many wins Jamie Dixon's got. I think that was always going to be a rebuilding year, especially after they lost Frankie Collins, who's their best player, to an injury. I think they're going to have a rough go of it. But But they protected their home floor. Give them credit because they practiced too, right? I mean, they were down 6, but they found a way to get some stops. They hit a bit of a prayer of a 3 from the top of the key from a kid who had barely played. And then they executed on their final possession to get a quality look and get a bucket. And K-State too often does not run good enough sets in the final minute of games, and they end up with what they got in the possession before Reynolds' game winner, which is a lot of standing around, 1 or 2 passes, and then it's a contested jumper from somebody. And those are bad possessions. And I don't understand, because I do think in the second half, K-State did get downhill. They did get to the rim. Doug McDaniel, I thought, was really good, the missed 1-and-1 front end notwithstanding. And he does unlock so much when he's playing that well for K-State. And they did run some good stuff, and they did get some buckets, and they did build that lead. That wasn't an accident, but minute left. You got to run something better. You can't settle. And too often K-State settles in those spots instead of just getting downhill and seeing if you can't draw a foul, but getting something that's a little bit more high percentage than a contested mid-range or a contested 3. It happened at the end of the Drake game in regulation, and it happened at the end of this one. If they get a better look, if they get fouled, who knows how that game turns out. But that continues to be a frustration for me with this K-State team. The end result is a loss that I'm not sure that they could really have afforded. When we look at their 20-game Big 12 schedule and the number of wins they're going to realistically need to get where they want to go, which is the NCAA tournament, that had to be one of the 12 or 13 wins, playing a team of that caliber, even on the road, because that's not a good team that they lost to. That's a game that K-State should have won, and it was in their hands. Make shots and don't miss 1-and-1s, and it's a different story.
I hate to beat this dead horse. I really do, because at some point it just gets to be, okay, you said that already. We've gotten to that point. We've been past that point. But do you think that the end of game stuff has anything to do with not having just a reliable? I don't think there's anyone on this K-State team who would say that dude's a bucket in modern basketball parlance. Like, there's nobody out there who you just say, yeah, that dude, one way or the other, is going to get his. And again, the obvious example, even more than Noel from 2 years ago, to me, it's Keontae Johnson, a dude who's big, who's maybe not a great shooter, but has a mid-range game, can get to the cup, can post up if you need. You just knew at that time, and again, I'm sorry for going back to the well with this point over and over again, but you knew on 30 seconds left, this might be our last meaningful possession without free throws. We've got to get a bucket. Who's this ball going to? You knew Keontae Johnson was going to give you a chance, and you could draw something up specifically to get that guy a chance. The closest thing you have for K-State is probably Hausen, because he's got the shooting ability, and we know how effective that can be in college basketball. And I'm glad he did have a better first half. He needed a kind of a bounce back game after he had struggled at the end of non-con. But that to me makes me feel like maybe that's why the schematics of some of these late game situations haven't been great, because, like, okay, we got to drop a play for who? Like if you're Kansas, right or wrong, you're drawing a play up for Hunter. You're getting it to him. Or if you need a shot, you're finding a way to get Zeke Mayo or Rylan Griffin open. If you're any number of teams, we've got this guy who's going to go and make a play for us. Who is that going to end up being for Kansas State? I don't think we know who it is. And when we had this discussion, Dan, at the end of November, that was one thing. We're into January. We're 2 games into the Big 12 schedule now. I don't know that we're going to find that guy, which makes me worried that if you can't, and if you just don't have it, then this is probably going to continue to be a bugaboo for K-State the rest of the way.
I think that they need to let Doug McDaniel create something, but I think maybe too often he's looking to create for himself. And that's the difference between him and Marquise Noel as a senior, which worked 2 years ago, was because Noel learned that he could lean on his teammates a little bit. And if something wasn't there for him, he could create something. And Doug McDaniel, I think, with the ball in his hands, is creative and can make things happen, good things happen. And he just needs to trust it in those moments. And he needs to be the guy that, hey, set him a screen, get him downhill, put that pressure on the rim. Because that's what happens not often enough in those late game scenarios. They just don't put any rim pressure on. Like, Noel would put that rim pressure on. McDaniel did it on that final possession. He got to the basket. He was just a little firm with that runner off the glass, and then nobody could secure the rebound. I have no problem with that. Make that your play. Do that. Send McDaniel downhill, clear out, ISO him one-on-one, send him to the rim. I'm okay with that. I can live with that higher percentage shot a lot easier than I can live with some aimless passing and a contested mid-range jumper. So, yeah, they're still looking for some answers late game and some broader answers. But I do think, again, it was another good showing for McDaniel, particularly in the second half. He wasn't good in the first half, but he was much better in the second half. I thought Coleman Hawkins was really good for the most part as far as an all-around game. He got in some foul trouble, which I thought was kind of some of that was his fault. Some of it I think was a raw whistle. But they know who their best guys are. They know, I think, like we talked about after they beat Cincinnati, they know what it's supposed to look like. The next step is making sure it looks like that for 40 minutes. We'll take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, it's our first round of What is Wrong with You for 2025. That's next on 580 WIBW. For the first time in 2025, it's a new batch of What is Wrong with You stories here on 580 Sports Talk. Again, if you missed it last week, we crowned our 8th annual What is Wrong with You champion for 2024. Dog looks like a panda, edging out Matthew Pancake in a finale for the ages. I don't know that we've had a more hotly contested finale, but we feel good about our decision as a committee to award Dog Looks Like a Panda, our yearly champ in 2024. Now we began the process of crowning a 9th annual champion at the end of 2025, and we begin with 2 new stories today. I will start the year as we head up to Vancouver Island up in the Northwest, where a 50-year-old Qualicum Beach motorist pulled over to stop a suspected impaired driver from driving further. In the process, he also stopped another suspected impaired driver from driving further himself. because he ended up failing a roadside alcohol screening test. This happened New Year's Eve around 5:30 p.m. Oceanside RCMP received a report about a possible impaired driver in Qualicum Beach. The suspect had pulled over on Fern Road near Berwick Road, and another motorist stopped to intervene, allegedly to prevent them from driving further. When officers arrived on the scene, they noticed the second driver had signs of alcohol consumption. A roadside screening test was administered, and the driver failed. As a result, the individual was immediately prohibited from driving for 90 days, and their vehicle was impounded for 30 days. Here's the kicker. The initially suspected impaired driver was stone sober. He just having a tough time driving in the dark.
Who among us?
So here's
Mercy.
like I've been in both situations. I have seen what I believed to be an impaired or a reckless driver, and this was back when they had toll booths still on the turnpike. And I remember stopping at the toll booth to pay my toll and telling the woman who was taking my money, hey, you might want to watch out for, I don't remember what kind of car it was, a little blue sports car. I said, I passed him about 10 minutes ago. He's driving really erratically, slow then fast. He's all over the road. You might want to keep an eye on him. She asked me if I got a license plate. I said I hadn't, but I felt like I did, my duty. Also, one time, I had somebody call them on me, and I had to explain to the police officers who pulled me over. This is back when I was working in Nebraska. They pulled me over about 5 miles west of Kearney, and I had to explain to them, no, I'm not driving impaired. It's windy, and the handling on this station vehicle is that bad. I am fighting a losing battle trying to keep this thing straight and on the road. We decommissioned that Chevy Tahoe shortly thereafter, and the police officer let me off with a have a nice day. So I've been on both sides of this equation. But yeah, if you're going to alert police to a suspected impaired driver, maybe make sure you yourself are not impaired. There's an easy lesson to be learned there.
Closest I've ever gotten to that, I've shared this story countless times on the show, but my that'd have been my first year that I was here on 580 Sports Talk. It was around Christmas time. I had gone with the girl I was dating at the time to her holiday work party. She was a teacher, and she was so sloppy drunk. It was awful, a truly miserable night. The party was in Independence. She lived in Overland Park, and I got on K10, and I'm not proud of it, but I hit the freaking gas. I was just racing home, and I knew I was going to get pulled over, and I did. I was going way over. Inappropriate, don't do that. But the cop gets out. He walks up, the state trooper, and he says, you know how fast you were going? I said, honestly, no. And he says, have you been drinking, sir? I said, no. Actually, you'll never believe it. I've never had a single one. Now, I'm completely stone sober. My girlfriend was drunk, though, and it was horrible and awful, and I'm trying to go home. He goes, okay, well, I get it. I still got a ticket, but he's like, okay, I understand why you were going fast. All right, my story today, a sandy donut. That sounds like a terrible breakfast. It is also a way to get the police to take you to jail because a 21-year-old man is accused of doing donuts in the sand on a Nahant beach near Boston. Nahant, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Allegedly doing it while he was drunk. Angel Montes, a resident of Lynn, Massachusetts, was arrested on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas. According to police, Montes made multiple trips to Long Beach on the Nahant Beach Reservation, speeding past pedestrians, doing donuts in the sand, and then driving into the ocean. Here's a good kicker for you, Dan. This all happened at 1:45 p.m.
PM.
Middle
of the day.
Broad daylight, middle of the afternoon. Yeah, people out doing their returns or whatever. Thankfully, no one was hurt. He was charged with operating under the influence of liquor, assault with a dangerous weapon on a person over the age of 60. Hello. Assault with a dangerous weapon. I imagine that's his car. Reckless operation of a motor vehicle and other related charges. He will reappear in court in 17 days from right now as we speak. So yeah, dude got drunk, decided he was going to go for a cruise, and then did donuts on the beach. You're just going to ruin your car that way, man. Then drove into the ocean.
Yeah, that's not going to take you anywhere good. I could go.
This, by the way, I should give fair credit. This was Spencer's story. So if it wins, Spencer gets credit for the win today. He is not here, obviously, though.
Vance in the YouTube comments. The cops caught him when they heard there were donuts on the beach.
Chief Wiggum refused to comment.
Low-hanging fruit, but a good gag all the same. All right, I got to go with the guy who pulled over a not drunk driver while drunk and accused them of being drunk. That's really funny.
I've never been drunk before, but I imagine if, you're really hammered, if you see someone acting normal, they probably seem weird to you, right?
That could be the dichotomy in play here. But that's going to be our winner today.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'll vote for that one too.
Yeah, the drunk driver story. There are two drunk driver stories today. But that story up from Vancouver Island from Canada is going to be our first winner for a day here in 2025 on What Is Wrong With You. We'll take a quick time out. When we come back, Black Monday in the NFL, but only 2 coaches got the axe today. Why only 2? And how appropriate's not the word. How enticing, that's the word. How enticing are the openings in New England and Jacksonville? We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk. .444 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero, Brendan Dworzinski hanging out with you on this Monday, a snowed-in edition of 580 Sports Talk. Neither of us able to make it up the hill, but both of us able to make it on the air today and bring us some sports talk. Appreciate you hanging out with us. 580 WIBW FM 104.9, 580WIBW.com, and the YouTube live stream at 580 Sports Talk. 2 coaches got fired today on what is termed typically Black Monday in the NFL. Doug Peterson in Jacksonville was the least surprising one. The only real surprise was that he made it as long as he did. And look, Doug Peterson's had a very interesting head coaching career. There have been a lot of really good early returns for him at both of his head coaching gigs. Obviously, Philadelphia won a Super Bowl, had Jacksonville in the playoffs right away with Trevor Lawrence, and diminishing returns as things went along in the Doug Peterson regimes, mostly because he can't seem to pick a very good offensive coordinator as he goes along. Doesn't pick great people to work for him. The real question for Jacksonville, though, is how much does it matter who the head coach is if it's Trent Baalke getting to pick him and pick the players?
Not at all. Like, they're lucky they got Doug Peterson. And say what you will about Dougie P, clearly things were not going well. He not only keeps hiring Press Taylor for unknown reasons, but he also hates Trevor Lawrence, which didn't help the first half of the year before they had to play Mac Jones. But they were lucky to get a coach of his caliber, because if you're think of the hottest names that are out there. Sounds like Mike Vrabel's probably going to New England. We'll get to that in a minute. But like Ben Johnson, you think Ben Johnson, the hottest potential head coach name in forever, he's going to go work for Trent Baalke? Absolutely not. Even Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, he'll probably be a head coach next year. He's going to go work for Trent Baalke? No way. Like, none of these guys who are hot commodity. Liam Cohen. If I'm Liam Cohen with the Buccaneers, I'd say, you know what? I'd rather be an offensive coordinator, have a fan base that loves me, and work with Baker than go work for Trent Baalke and be their head coach. No, thank you. So no, I think this was a major misstep. And we'll get to another team here in just a moment that also did not fire their GM today. A couple teams probably. I don't get it. Like, there's such a weird connection between owners and some of these GMs who have never proven to actually be good. Baalke does an incredible job of keeping his job. I give him credit for that. But in terms of building a winner, it's terrible. And I wouldn't work for him. If I was an offensive coordinator getting interviews, I would not work in Jacksonville. No way.
Jed York chose Trent Baalke over Jim Harbaugh, famously. And I don't know. Maybe Trent Baalke's a great hang. I don't know. I don't know the man personally. Maybe he's just got compromising photographs of everybody in the NFL. But the fact that he has been able to keep a job, not just in San Francisco, running Jim Harbaugh off and keeping his job, but now keeping a job in Jacksonville, which is a total mess. It's mystifying to me. I think Matt Verderam's going to join us tomorrow, NFL Insider. Couldn't join us today. We didn't have the technology to make it happen with both of us being remote. But he'll join us on tomorrow's show when we're back in the studio. And I want to get his thoughts on how it is that Trent Baalke remains employed and gets to hire another head coach, because it is mystifying to me. The other firing today, you alluded to it. New England has a vacancy. Gerard Mayo fired after just one season. There's a theory out there. And the more I think about it, the more I wonder if there might be something to it in New England, is that Gerard Mayo and Cam Newton were brought to New England for the same reason, because they were going to be the fall guy following a legend. That the guy who followed the guy, it was never going to work for whoever it was who was the guy who followed the guy. Not a quarterback, not a head coach. Whoever came after Tom Brady and whoever came after Bill Belichick, it just wasn't, they weren't going to measure up. Didn't matter who it was. So they went and got Cam Newton, end of career Cam Newton for a year, and that went how it was always fated to go. And then they hired Gerard Mayo, and that went very poorly, because clearly he didn't have what it took to lead a locker room. Like, at the end of the day, Gerard Mayo did not have what it took to be a head coach. And so he's out of a job after a year. New England probably going to hire Mike Vrabel, but like, are you super keen on that being a great job if Robert Kraft is more meddlesome as he ages?
So I think I buy that theory certainly for Cam Newton, because the upside is we got a former MVP and it worked out and he took us to the playoffs and he looked pretty good. Like, that's the upside of that move, right? The downside is, okay, well, that cushions the blow for whoever the real next guy is after Tom Brady, which turned into Mac Jones, and he sucked too. But I believe that certainly for Cam Newton. I don't know if I buy that completely for Gerard Mayo. And the reason why is we had heard for years, like we're going back to the minute he retired, whispers like, hey, he's gonna be a coach. It might not be in New England, or it might be in New England, but he's gonna be a head coach. And I just feel like he was such a coach in waiting for such a long time. I don't know that that was necessarily the case. I will ask, though, and I think this leads into the question you asked me, Dan. Have you seen the story about when Gerard Mayo went with Robert Kraft on a trip to Israel? Have you seen that story floating around?
I have not.
Robert Kraft, and I'm paraphrasing here and keeping it short because we're pressed for time, he essentially said the thing that sold him on Gerard Mayo being a head coach in the NFL, they were waiting at the gate for their flight back home to the U.S., and they were delayed for some reason. And Gerard Mayo essentially said, all right, everyone else on this trip, gather around, get in a circle. We're going to have an open forum discussion. What did we take away from this group trip to Israel? And Robert Kraft was like, yes, leadership qualities. That's a head coach. I'm serious. That story is out there with quotes from Robert Kraft. Like, if that is who's going to make the decisions, I don't know that that's a great job. I don't know that Mike Vrabel is the perfect fit for that job. I think Vrabes is a fine coach. He won a bunch in Tennessee. It helped to have Derrick Henry, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame. If he gets the right offensive coordinator in there, I think they can be pretty good. I mean, they need a lot of talent too. I think they're going to go sign T. Higgins. That sounds like it's almost a done deal at this point. They needed a good offensive coordinator and QB developer for Drake May, who looks like he can be special, but you don't want to stunt his growth with Mike Vrabel, who is rough around the edges, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, I don't think Gerard Mayo is good. I think he was really bad to the point where I don't know that the locker room would have been thrilled if he was back for another year. But I don't know that I trust either of the Crafts right now, Robert or his son Jonathan, because yikes, it's looking like pre-Belichick era New England already.
Yeah, the rot feels like it's at the roots there, maybe in New England. Though Drake May, like you said, he definitely showed some flashes as a rookie. No changes in New York for the Giants. Brian Daboll will come back.
Ridiculous.
Joe Schoen will come back. Look, Joe Schoen, like me, DePauw University alum. It pains me to say bad things about DePauw University alums, but you've heard me say some dumb stuff on the radio. You heard Dan Quayle, a DePauw alum, try to spell potato with an E at the end. And still, Joe Schoen might take the cake for the most publicly airheaded DePauw University graduate because they let Saquon Barkley go for nothing and thought everything was going to be fine. And they are a train wreck. I actually don't think Brian Daboll is a bad coach. Like, he went to the playoff with Daniel Jones. I think that makes some sense. I just don't know how you keep that entire front office intact because Joe Schoen bungled last offseason so badly. And to bring him back, like, where's the accountability? That's what it gets down to in situations like this. It looks like there's no accountability in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, he picked Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley. Saquon's probably going to win Offensive Player of the Year. He's one of the best running backs in football. He should have set the all-time record. They should have played him, but we're past that already. It's ridiculous. And if they'd fired Daboll, I get it. Like, that they're in a bad spot, but I'm with you. I think Daboll's a good coach. I think he'll get another opportunity. That to me feels like Todd Bowles, who, you know my feelings on Todd Bowles, but the Jets were so dysfunctional that after a year or two of image rehabilitation, someone was willing to take a shot on Todd Bowles again because the Jets were awful. I think the same thing will happen with Daboll if he eventually does leave New York, because I do think he's a good offensive coach at the very least. He's weird, but he's a good coach. Keeping Joe Schoen is crazy. Same thing in Indianapolis. Jim Irsay posted something, it was either this morning or yesterday, about keeping both Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. I liked Steichen at the start of the year. I do not think he had a good season. I don't get it with Chris Ballard. Like, what is he good at? What has he done? They have a bad roster. Their quarterback situation is in flux, to say the least. I can't believe he is still employed.
Yeah, I don't know what the plan is in New York. I don't know what the plan is in Indianapolis either. And it's a bad spot to be in when you feel like you're in a franchise adrift. And both the Giants and the Colts certainly feel that way today. We're going to take a quick timeout. We'll come back, wrap up the 4 o'clock hour, 580 Sports Talk after this. Wrapping up hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk with a look back at the results from the Prairie Band Sportsbook 580 Sports Talk Picks Contest for the weekend. Brendan is the over in the FCS title game tonight, away from a perfect week. Nicely done, Brendan. You got a chance to get back into the lead, in fact, after Spencer's 1-2 week. He hit the under in Dallas, Washington, as he continues to have the finger on the pulse of his favorite teams better than maybe anybody I have ever met. Like, if he had his record on Commanders and Marshall stuff. Marshall, by the way, they were 12-1 against the spread this year. So just taking Marshall all season long would have been profitable, but Marshall and the Commanders, he's got it on lockdown with those, but he was 1-2 this week. I went 0-3. I blame fatherhood. I've had a bad year.
I love using that as an excuse now. It's awesome.
Yes, it's my new favorite excuse. Coming up in the next hour, 580 Sports Talk, we got our headlines, and we'll talk more NFL and Chiefs to wrap up the show. Let's get it. Third and final hour of this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. So great to have you with us as we encounter unique circumstances on this Monday edition of the show. With the crew snowed in after 14 plus inches of snow dumped on Topeka yesterday. A remote broadcast coming to you live from our homes. Dan Lucero, Brendan Dworzinski, chilling with you on this Monday on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and on our live video stream, 580 WIBW Facebook page at WIBW News, and 580 Sports Talk is the YouTube channel. Welcome, friends. Welcome, ball knowers. Thanks for being with us on this Monday. Get in the live chat on the YouTube if you are watching on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel. Love to see everybody in the live chat interacting. And also, you can text the show 785-272-9429. As an interstitial special treat today for our YouTube viewers, Brendan and I have been conducting a bit of a Ask Me Anything in the chat. And the thing that is frustrating sometimes about Ask Me Anything is we usually do it around now. Like sometimes if we get some time to kill in the 5 o'clock hour, we usually do it around now, right around we're starting to get hungry. And inevitably, the topic on Ask Me Anything turns to food. Inevitable that it will happen. You're talking about Mexican places in town and which taco is preferred. Soft shell, by the way.
Yes,
street,
soft, 100%.
Yes, street tacos, 1,000% of the way. Not that I won't eat a hard shell taco, but the preference here is a street taco. So, yeah, we get started talking about food, and, sometimes it makes me a little hungry in the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Good news is I have a really short commute home today, and I can get started on dinner roughly 30 seconds after we're done with the show. So we got
what do you have, 12 steps, 12 stairs, and then you're there?
Something like that. I've never counted, actually. I'll have to count on my way up so I know exactly how many steps to get from my basement right into the kitchen. We're doing ponzu meatballs today on bed of rice with your favorite vegetable, roasted carrots.
Disgusting. Awful. Sounded great. I was gonna dig out of my driveway and head over for dinner, and then you're like, oh, by the way, carrots, and now I'm not gonna see you till tomorrow. So
okay,
whatever. You won't have company for dinner tonight.
More carrots for Abby and I. That's perfect. And we'll see if Asher can try some. We're at the stage where we try and give him a little bit of everything that we eat, and some things he's a fan of, other things he's not such a fan of. I think he liked the pork last night. We did like a pork stir fry bowl, rice bowl. It was really good. And set him up with some of the pork, and he seemed to like that. But so a short commute home for both Brendan and I today as we're snowed in. We'll be back in the studio tomorrow, weather permitting. I would imagine that, again, the folks in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, did an outstanding job getting highways back open, getting I-70 back open, getting some of the major streets plowed. Getting out of the neighborhoods might still be an adventure tomorrow, but I have confidence that we'll be able to get up Pontoon Hill tomorrow, even if we have to gun it a little bit. We'll get up the hill, and we'll make it in, and we'll do a show for you tomorrow from the studio on 580 Sports Talk. But one more hour of the program today to get to. We're going to talk just a little bit more about the Chiefs and the game that they played that certainly, of all of the NFL games in history, that was one of them, as the Chiefs lost to the Broncos 38-0 yesterday. Worst loss by final margin of the Andy Reid era, and the first time the Chiefs had allowed 31-plus points since that Super Bowl against the Eagles. We'll talk about players that stood to help or hurt their stock in the short and the long term, and whether or not they put forward performances that were good enough to help or instead hurt their future stock with the Chiefs moving forward. That's still to come. A little bit more NFL talk as we wrap up the show today. But first, we're going to start the program the way that we always start the 5 o'clock hour at 580 Sports Talk, and that is with our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We got some football headlines to get to. We got a Royals headline to get to. But we'll start with the top 25 men's and women's college basketball polls for the new week. After a loss this past week, the Kansas Jayhawks are down 4 spots to number 11 in the latest AP men's basketball top 25. That makes the Jayhawks the second highest ranked team in the conference. Iowa State remains third. Also ranked from the Big 12, Houston up 2 spots to number 12. West Virginia into the poll, and deservedly so. West Virginia, who pasted Oklahoma State over the weekend, they're at 11-2 now. They're into the poll for the first time at number 21. And that's it. Only 4 Big 12 teams in the men's top 25. Tennessee remains the number 1 team in the country, 45 of the first place votes. Auburn with the rest of the first place votes, the other 15, they are number 2. Iowa State, Duke, Alabama round out the top 5. Kentucky, Marquette, Florida, UConn, and Texas A&M numbers 6 through 10. Then Kansas, Houston, Illinois, Mississippi State, and Oregon, a big faller this week after they lost to Maryland. They dropped to number 15. 16 through 20, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Gonzaga, Memphis, and Purdue back into the poll this week. 21 through 25, West Virginia, UCLA, Ole Miss, Michigan, and Utah State. Over on the women's side, K-State holds firm at number 12. They pasted Texas Tech on Saturday at Bramlage Coliseum, 28-9 in the third quarter to break open what had been a close game, and the Cats win that one by 20. They go to 15-1 on the year, 3-0 in Big 12 play. They are the second highest ranked Big 12 team in the country behind 11th ranked TCU. Also ranked on the women's side from the Big 12, West Virginia at number 17, Utah at number 22 after they went to Hilton Coliseum and pulled out a win over Iowa State yesterday. The top 5 in the women's poll, UCLA number 1, South Carolina number 2, Notre Dame, USC, and Texas rounding out that top 5. Those are your AP men's and women's top 25 polls for a new week. Brendan, first headline.
Yeah, I was just going to add real quick to that. I think that's probably fair for KU, on the fringes of the top 10. I'm not going to complain. I'm sure someone out there is at this point. That's fine. The loss to West Virginia, they're playing pretty well. And, they're a top 40 team according to KenPom. Their net's fine. You can't lose that game at home. The win over UCF, not weighted quite as heavily by the voters, but no, that seems about right. KU seems right now like a team right on the fringes of the top 10. I've got no complaints there. Tough look for Drake, our neighbors to the north from Des Moines. They got ranked and now have lost back-to-back games to UIC and to Murray State. Not great. Not great for Ben McCollum's group to fall out of the poll this week. All right, first headline for me today. How about a little baseball news? It's cold out. You want to heat up a little hot stove? Let's
do it.
It's a low simmer, okay? Low simmer. We do, outside of the Royals, actually have a trade that just went down moments ago. This reported by Jeff Passan of ESPN. The Cincinnati Reds, who already made a trade with the Royals earlier this offseason for Jonathan India. The Reds are receiving infielder Gavin Lux from the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are getting a competitive balance round pick, and outfield prospect Mike Sirota back in exchange. So nothing huge, but fine.
Let me interject because Jeff Passan has also just broken some Royals news.
Oh, shoot. Well, go ahead. That's going to supersede my news.
Yes, we have breaking Royals news. Right-hander Michael Lorenzen and the Royals are in agreement on a 1-year, $7 million contract, sources tell ESPN. Reading from Passan's tweet. Lorenzen, 33, was excellent down the stretch. The deal includes a second-year mutual option for $12 million. Versatile arm, great clubhouse guy. I love this for the Royals. We had talked about this being a possibility this offseason. When the Royals traded Brady Singer, we were talking about, okay, well, who's going to step in and who's going to fill that void in the rotation left by Brady Singer, who's a guy who was a solid mid-rotation arm who took the ball every 5 days and made 30 starts. Who's going to fill that void? Obviously, you're going to slide Alec Marsh up the pecking order a little bit. After he moved to the bullpen late last year, you figure you pencil him back in the rotation, maybe expect some improvement from Marsh in his third big league season. Chris Bubich is being reported as being a guy who they might move back to the rotation. They have Kyle Wright, who won 20 games 3 seasons ago for the Braves, but now bringing Lorenzen back. I love this for 2 reasons. Number one, you can never have too many guys who can credibly start a big league game. You can never have too many guys. The ability to turn every single day to someone who can get you innings and make them quality innings cannot be overstated how much that meant to last year's Royals. how
Mhm.
big a deal it was for last year's Royals and helped them go from 56 wins to 86 wins because they could trust that every day they had a starting pitcher who was going to give them a chance.
Yep.
So you can never have too many arms. The other thing, Lorenzen was a guy who got to Kansas City and made some tweaks to his repertoire, how he used his pitches, when he used his pitches, what he threw more often, what he threw less often, and was starting to see some real good results before he tweaked his hamstring in that game in Cleveland late in August. And we never really got to see him back out there taking regular turns in the rotation again. But if Lorenzen found something with the Royals that was working for him that he wants to continue to pursue, it made sense for him to reunite with the Royals and Brian Sweeney and the pitching staff there, or the coaching staff, and it made sense for the Royals to bring him back. I love this both ways. It's another data point in favor of the Royals being much smarter when it comes to how they develop pitching now at the major league level, and it makes this pitching staff even deeper to the point where I don't know now that you have to move Chris Bubich back to the rotation. You can keep him in a late game, high leverage role that he was really starting to excel in last season.
Let me run something by you. This is let's take shop this one. I think if you're saying that your spot in the rotation, that third or fourth spot in the rotation, you're switching from Brady Singer to now 33-year-old Michael Lorenzen. I think Brady Singer still probably offers you the higher ceiling at this stage of their careers, but I think on your day-to-day, start-to-start, most likely outcome, you're more likely to get a positive, consistent outing from Michael Lorenzen. Does that seem fair?
I'd say, well, it's hard to say because I don't think we've seen the version of Michael Lorenzen that the Royals were starting to coax out of him for a full season yet. So I don't necessarily know what it's going to like. There might be a little bit more ceiling than you'd expect from a 33-year-old, frankly, journeyman like Lorenzen because the Royals were starting to unlock a better version of him. I will say this. The consternation you always had with Brady Singer was that there was no third pitch, and if he was facing a lineup that was chock full of lefties, you kind of felt like you were going to have a bad time. And more often than not, you kind of did have a bad time because lefties would tune up Brady Singer like a piano. You don't have that wide platoon split necessarily with Lorenzen. He's got more of a varied pitch mix. He might be a guy the Royals can get more out of even than they got out of Singer. I think we collectively kind of underrate how good Brady Singer actually was. We spent too much time focusing on what he wasn't instead of what he could be and what he did give the Royals. But I certainly think that if you're considering that the Royals' three best guys in this upcoming year's rotation are going to be Cole Reagans, Seth Lugo, and Michael Wacha, what you're looking for in 4-5 are consistent guys who take their turn, who can give you 6 innings, who can miss a bat, and who give you the confidence that you can win that game every day when you show up to the clubhouse. And I think Michael Lorenzen fits that bill. And I think that, again, it means you are less reliant on. Now, look, you're going to need more than 5 guys, right? Like last year, the Royals got so lucky that they didn't really deal with a big injury crisis with their pitching staff, and they could lean on the same 5 guys all year. That's not likely to repeat itself. You're going to need 7, 8 starters, but now you've pushed a converted Chris Bubich further down the list. You pushed Kyle Wright coming off of shoulder surgery further down the list. You pushed anybody from AAA further down the list and made them a little bit less important to your success, to the idea that you can go win an American League Central Division title. So that's why I like it. You firmed up your depth chart from the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starter roles that are going to be extremely important to this team's success in 2025.
The one thing that I think is interesting to note, the Royals now have a really old rotation. Like, this is a really old group. Cole Reagans is 27. Lorenzen's 33. This will be the age 35 season for Lugo. This will be the age 33 season for Wacha as well. So it's an older group, but I mean, what's more important right this second? Worrying about that or worrying about fielding a playoff team in 2025? It's the latter, so I'm not going to complain. I love this piece of business for the Royals. I'm all in on it. The other piece of news from the Royals this weekend, I missed this when it initially broke, but the more and more I think about it, the more I actually really like this as a reclamation project. The Royals have signed Cavan Biggio, that's Craig's son, Cavan Biggio, to a minors deal. He'll, of course, get an opportunity to make the big league club coming up in spring training, starting in just about, 6-7 weeks at this point. Biggio was really bad this past season. There's really no getting around it. He played for 3 different teams. He played a little bit for Toronto for 44 games, 30 with the Dodgers, then had all of 5 plate appearances with the Braves at the end of the season as well. Had a bad year. There's no getting around it. But in the first 5 years of his career, while he never quite lived up to his prospect hype and being the son of one of the best hitters of all time, he was fine. He was a fairly somewhat close to league average hitter. He had an above average OPS plus each of his first 2 years. That includes the COVID season, and has been a little bit below average in the few seasons, 21, 22, 23, prior to last year. He only has one season that's in the Garrett Hampson range of offensive production. I am all in on improving from Garrett Hampson to Cavan Biggio, who isn't an elite glove by any means, but he's got a good enough glove. He can legitimately play at a number of different positions. And look, I don't even remember how many at-bats Garrett Hampson got this past year, but if you swap those with Cavan Biggio, who's going to get you at least a handful more hits, good, all for it. So, I mean, he's not going to be, hopefully he's not going to be an everyday starter, but I can live with this as, your 13th batter or whatever.
You're barking up the right tree here. This isn't a Garrett Hampson swap here. This is an Adam Frazier swap because Biggio's a left-handed hitter.
Oh,
and,
sure.
Plays more positions than Frazier does and will probably replace those 294 plate appearances from Adam Frazier last year. Here's the thing that makes Biggio, I think, a good addition for the Royals. You said Cavan Biggio had a bad year last year. That's undeniable. He batted 197 and slugged 303. That's pretty gross. He got on base at a 314 clip, even in a miserable year. He got on base 31% of the time. Worst year of his career, he got on base 31% of the time. Brendan, can you name all of the regulars for the Royals who had a better on-base percentage than Cavan Biggio last year?
Ooh. Vinny Salvi?
Bobby Witt, 389. Salvador Perez, 330. Vinny Pasquantino by 1 percentage point. Vinny got on base at a 315 clip. If you want to count Freddie Fermin, I think it's fair to do so. He did get 368 plate appearances. Yep. Freddie Fermin got on at a 319 clip. That's it. Those are the only guys for the Royals last year who were better at getting on base than Cavan Biggio in a career worst year. So if I may quote Brad Pitt as Billy Bean and use you, Brendan, as my Peter Brand, what does Cavan Biggio do? He gets on base. He gets on base. And that is a skill that the Royals have lacked. It was a skill that really hurt them at times last season. Adding Jonathan India and now doing a minor deal with Cavan Biggio tells me the Royals are keenly aware that they have an on-base problem. They have a problem with guys who just know how to, even if you're not getting hits, draw a walk, get on base. And it's never been a strength of the Royals. Like their entire history, they have never been a team with a bunch of dudes who will stand there and watch ball four. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you need some guys on your bench or in your lineup that'll stand there and watch ball four. So when the balls aren't falling, when the ground balls don't have eyes for a week, you're still helping your team because you're not making an out and you're getting on base. So when you look at Cavan Biggio, ignore the number in the batting average department from last year. Look at that on-base number. That's why the Royals wanted him. I would bet right now as we're sitting here, he will be on the 26-man roster on opening day.
Agreed.
And I think he's going to replace Adam Frazier. I think he's going to be in that Adam Frazier role, and I think he's going to be better than Adam Frazier. He's got a little bit more pop. He's got more defensive versatility. And again, what does he do? He gets on base.
It's on base. Yeah, and real quick, because I know we got to move on, but I do think I was making the comparison to Garrett Hampson, even to Adam Frazier, career numbers, you're taking Cavan Biggio over what you're getting from, or would have gotten from Adam Frazier. Plus, he's younger, too, so maybe you have a little ceiling that's, a little potential that's still untapped.
We got some NFL headlines. We're going to get to those. We're going to pull those out. We're going to get to those before we wrap up the show today. One more headline today, and it's a golf update from my friends at Great Life Topeka. Hideki Matsuyama set a PGA Tour scoring record in the season-opening PGA Tour event at Kapalua in the Century. 35 under par for Hideki Matsuyama. That is the best score to par in a 4-round PGA Tour event ever. Very impressive for Hideki. It's his third win in the last 11 months. They've all been signature events for the former Masters champ. He is back being a force to be reckoned with on the PGA Tour. Unfortunately, not great golfing conditions right now in greater Topeka, as you can see if you just simply look out your window. But when that snow melts, you can best believe that the Great Life Topeka golf courses are going to be in great shape. They're going to be open to you to play, and a membership gives you an opportunity to play free at those courses. 5 great courses in the greater Topeka area. Become a member today and enjoy all those benefits. If you're an all-inclusive member like I am, you get a chance to get a free bucket of balls, free large bucket of range balls every day at one of their ranges if you're an all-inclusive member, and free bay rentals at Top City Golf North up on Highway 24, which that might be your best option if you really want to go club some balls here in the next few days, is the bay rentals at Top City Golf. So go to greatlifetopeka.com for more information from my friends at Great Life. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll dip back into the Chiefs. Who helped their stock? Who hurt their stock with their performance in yesterday's football game that happened? We'll discuss it next as we roll along here on 580 Sports Talk. It's 5:29 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero, Brendan Rosinski with you. Glad you're joining us. On this unique edition of 580 Sports Talk, where we have the two of us in our respective homes hanging out because we're snowed in. 14 plus inches dropping in Topeka yesterday. So we'll be back in the studio tomorrow. But for today, unique circumstances. I'm sure unique audio on your end, but hopefully you are enjoying the program today.
In terms of places where you've hosted sports talk that don't include our studio, where does your own couch rank?
Pretty high, honestly, because again, can't beat the commute. You really can't beat how long it took me to get down here and how long it's going to take me to get back and see my wife and son after we're done with the show. Not that I have a long one anyway. I'm fortunate. I live very close to our Huntoon Hill studios. That is not an arduous commute home by any means on a regular basis, but just going up the stairs be pretty great. I've hosted from hotels, from libraries, from my apartment back when I was living in Nebraska. I've done that before. So it's not a first time for me, but definitely some advantages to doing it at home for sure. Like I could go get a cold drink between hours 1 and 2. That was great. Like it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think I'm going Alamo Dome number 1. We did the show from the Alamo Dome at the Final Four. That's going to be number 1.
Yeah.
I think home is number 2. I think my kitchen table is going to be number 2. 3, we're going to go with the Tahlequah, Oklahoma Best Western. Your boy will be making a return appearance in a few weeks. That's probably 3. 4, I'm not gonna shout out or shout down anyone who sponsors or will in the future sponsor 580 Sports Talk. Grocery store food court, probably about 4 out of the 5 person list. And then number 5 is the Oklahoma City Public Library.
I'll never forget that story. Yeah, Alamo Dome during the Reese's All-Star game was a high point during the 2018 Final Four. That actually we didn't actually go to that because Kansas never went to that Final Four. So that actually none of that ever happened really.
The addendum to the story, the part of the story people forget about when Jake and I did the show, Fulton's first week working here, by the way, he had to run the board while Jake and I were at the freaking Oklahoma City Public Library. The part of the story that gets forgotten is Jake asking on our way to the study room to set up our gear, why are all these people here? It's like, because what do you mean? What are they doing here? They're reading, studying. Why? Any number of reasons. What do you mean, why? He couldn't believe people of their own volition would go to a library. It's like, this is peak Jock Laban here.
Yeah, the ultimate Jock Laban story. Oh, man. Jake and I, speaking of Jake, we did the show once from Kauffman Stadium. I think it was the home opener. And we did the show. They were gracious enough to let us use a booth, like an auxiliary TV booth that wasn't in use. And we did the show. We had Steve Physiok on, and he came by the booth and did part of the show with us. So yeah, that was high on my list too, for sure. But again, the commute here from the couch in the sports cave.
Don't have to deal with Truman Sports Complex traffic.
No, that's a fact. That is a fact. I didn't have to carry my gear very far. A lot of upside to having done the show at home today. Speaking of people who wish they could have stayed home, the Kansas City Chiefs. They played against the Denver Broncos yesterday, a game that can be described as one that happened as scheduled to complete the NFL regular season. Again, the Broncos played great. It looked like how it was supposed to look for a team at home with everything to play for, a chance to make the playoffs. So a playoff caliber team against a team playing its backups. It wasn't trying hard. The game looked like how it was supposed to look, a 38-0 Bronco victory. And while the team result meant literally nothing, there was a lot to gain, I think, for a handful of individuals for the Chiefs in that contest yesterday afternoon. And I think the biggest name to discuss coming out of the game was DJ Humphries. As someone who's not an expert, didn't grind the tape, just watching DJ Humphries play left tackle over the course of Sunday's game, I would say he had good moments. I would say there were a couple of moments where he got beat by like a rented mule by a pass rusher in Nick Bonito, who's having a really good year. And I don't know if I came away from that feeling firmly like it is worth it for the Chiefs to play him at left tackle in the divisional round. Now, again, that's the big decision for Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and frankly, Patrick Mahomes to make. But did you watch DJ Humphries play and think, oh yeah, nail that guy on at left tackle for the divisional round? Or do you think that there was enough to worry about from that performance that you feel more comfortable moving forward with Joe Thuney at that spot?
It's a good question. I think the way I would permutate that question is to say, which situation would you rather, because Thuney's going to be out there. I mean, Thuney's a borderline Hall of Famer. Which situation would you rather have? Are you running Thuney, your normal 3 on the right side is going to be Taylor, then Smith, then Humphrey, and then Thuney at guard, Humphreys at tackle, Thuney at tackle, Caliendo at guard, Suamataia at guard, and Thuney at tackle, because that's where Kingsley played. And you said it last night during our YouTube stream of the Chiefs Instant Reaction Show. You can find that on the YouTube channel right now, 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. He was unnoticeable, really. Like, he didn't do anything that killed the game. I mean, you at least have to consider that. And maybe that's his spot going forward, which, we'll get to that conversation in the offseason when contracts come up. But I do think you have to ask, what is going to maximize it? Are you at your best if you say, Thuney is an A+ at guard or an A- B+ tackle? What's more valuable, having that B+ tackle and like a B- guard in Caliendo, or having an A+ guard in Thuney and a C+ tackle in DJ Humphries? Like, which of those ends up making the most sense? I would start Humphreys for what it's worth. I would go with DJ Humphreys starting at tackle because the thing that's going to help him out a lot when we get to postseason play, the fact that he's playing next to a Hall of Famer. Having Joe Thuney next to him is going to help him quite a bit. And I think that could push things over the edge.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah, that is the calculus that the Chiefs have to do. And the most important voice in this is probably number 15. Like Patrick Mahomes, I'm sure, was watching some of those reps and will watch some of that tape with a keen eye because he's got to answer the question, do I think the offense functions with DJ Humphreys at left tackle? Can I trust that guy? He's only been in the building for a month. Can I trust him with my blind side in 3 must-win games? And if the answer comes back yes, then put him out there because Joe Thuney as a left guard, that's where he's his best. And that's where the Chiefs' offensive line is its best when he's playing there and they are getting even average left tackle play. Can DJ Humphreys give you average? There were times yesterday where I thought the answer was yes. There were times, most of them in the second half yesterday, where I wondered. So, again, that's why Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Heck, those guys, that's why they get paid the big money to make those decisions. But I don't think it's a firm no. Let's just say that. He kept his name in the conversation. He did not play his way out of an opportunity to start in the divisional round. I think that's the best way I could put it. You mentioned Kingsley Suamataia. Yeah, we didn't really notice him, which is, I think, ideal because we kept noticing him at left tackle and not in a good way. When he played left guard yesterday next to DJ Humphreys, I thought he was mostly fine. And his physicality might fit guard a little bit better than tackle. But that is, like you said, a conversation that might be better for the offseason. What about Felix Anudike-Uzomah? Mark B brings him up in the YouTube live chat, said that he showed some more upside, has some tape that might be useful going forward for him and the Chiefs. I mentioned him on the live stream instant reaction yesterday. That feels like he is making one play every time he's out there. And he's only getting he got a lot more snaps yesterday, but even in games where he's only getting 15 to 25% of defensive snaps, feels like he's making one play every game, showing his power, showing his speed, showing his ability to get into the backfield. Progress has been slower than maybe the Chiefs would have liked with Felix, but I think it's undeniable progress.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's probably not the kind of progress that you want from a guy who was a first-round pick. You mentioned that the other day. But yeah, you're seeing more. You're seeing something. I was trying to pull up the next gen stats, see if there was anything that really popped off the page about how well he played, all things considered. I'm not disappointed. He gave me enough to say, yeah, I'm not going to deactivate him for playoff games. I hope he is able to add something. You need as much juice as possible getting after the quarterback when you get to the postseason. Margins are smaller. The opportunity to take advantage of an opponent's mistake, they are few and far between because every team ideally is at their best. So you've got to be productive when you are out there. But he's done enough that situationally I'm fine bringing him in. He's not going to kill you. So I'm fine with it. I still think that there is a lot of room left to be able to say oh yes, if Charles Omenihu leaves after this season and he is a free agent, can Felix Anudike-Uzomah be edge 2? I'm not at that point yet, but it's enough to feel okay. Yeah, he can contribute over the next 3 weeks of the season, hopefully.
One guy who did not cover himself in glory, and I hate to keep picking on him because I know he's Spencer's guy. He's a Marshall Thundering Herd, and his comeback from a knee injury to get on the field and contribute in any way is a positive sign for Nazeeh Johnson this season. But every quarterback that plays the Chiefs looks immediately for number 13 and starts singing the Shaquille O'Neal barbecue chicken alert song because they just go at him. And he just does not appear to have the ball skills and the coverage skills to really play for the Chiefs. And it sounds like Jalen Watson hopefully is going to trend in a good direction to get him back on the field. But I wonder if Steven Nelson might be active for the playoffs and might be out there instead of Nazeeh Johnson, because I just don't know that the Chiefs can afford to even have the possibility of a snap, a must-stop third down, or a must-stop red zone opportunity, and Nazeeh Johnson's playing single coverage because you've got to blitz. You got to come after Justin Herbert in the divisional round. You got to come after Josh Allen in the AFC title game. And if Nazeeh Johnson ends up in a position where he's one-on-one on an island, like, you kind of know how that's going to go.
No, I agree with you. I feel like the Chiefs are going to keep him active. They might promote Steven Nelson anyway. Has he been elevated this season?
No, he hasn't.
Okay.
He's been kind of a break glass in case of emergency guy.
I mean, shoot, the Chiefs are going to play a maximum of 3 games. Every player on the practice squad gets 3 elevations. We might see him elevated regardless. That's probably your best case scenario. The problem is the Chiefs are going to stick with their guys, right? Generally speaking, and until they're forced not to, like, hey, Patrick Mahomes is limping every time he gets hit. Maybe we need to make a change at left tackle. I feel like they're still probably going to lean with Nazeeh Johnson over Steven Nelson in most situations, but there's no margin for error here. Like, you can't afford that one. Even if the Texans knock off the Chargers, like, CJ Stroud's got a one-on-one on 3rd down and 8, pressure in his face, and he sees Nazeeh Johnson out there. Like, that's where the ball is going. Do you trust him to make that play? At this stage, I don't think you can. I don't think he's given you any reason to believe in that. He's a great story, but stories don't always win Super Bowls. In fact, they rarely do.
Our guy Spencer's in the live chat, unable to join us on the video today, but even Spencer says he's a full-time special teamer at best. And that might be, there's no shame. You can carve out a long career. Yeah, you can carve out a long career as a core special teamer, and the Chiefs love their core special teams guys. But,
he's been good on special teams. Like, he is good at that.
Yeah, but it's certainly been a rough ride for him on the outside for Nazeeh Johnson this season. We'll step aside for a timeout. When we come back, got some more NFL things to gnaw over, including Tyreek Hill wanting out of Miami, and one popular head coaching candidate saying, yeah, thanks, but no thanks to a team with a vacancy. Very funny. We'll talk about that next as we roll along here on 580 Sports Talk. .545 on 580 Sports Talk, rounding third, heading for home on this Monday edition. Dan Lucero, Brendan Dworzinski. We'll be back in studio tomorrow. Some NFL headlines we didn't get a chance to get to in headlines today. Tyreek Hill, after the Miami Dolphins ended their disappointing season with a loss to the Jets, who had nothing to play for yesterday. Theoretically, Miami had something to play for. But they, without the ability to, in the end, make the playoffs because of Denver's win, they ended up losing to the Jets. Tyreek Hill went on the record after the game in the locker room saying he is done with the Dolphins. He is ready to leave Miami, And he says, the door is open and I am out. So I had two thoughts. Number one, the Chiefs already got 2 open box specials on Tyreek Hill. They got the open box special on him because they drafted him because he had beaten up his pregnant girlfriend in college, and they got him in the 5th round, even though he was a talent much greater than that draft position. Then they got another open box special on his first contract extension because, again, he had beaten up his pregnant girlfriend and had a track record of off-field behavior that was not very good and would go on to have some more incidents that did not paint him in the best light. And the Chiefs were able to pay him probably less than he was really deserved on his first contract extension. So they got 2 open box specials on Tyreek Hill. They're not going to get a third, are they? Is somebody getting an open box special on Tyreek Hill? Because I still think he's got a lot to offer. And if he doesn't want to go back to Miami, then he's not going back to Miami. Like that relationship is over.
So, okay, first part of the question, if the Chiefs do this, I'd be shocked. I guess not completely shocked. I never thought Kareem Hunt would be back, and here we are. I wouldn't do it. I would not even think about it, to be completely honest with you. I know he's great. He's probably a Hall of Famer, man. He's got 5 first-team All-Pros. One was as a special teamer, but still, that many All-Pros, that's a heck of a player. He's been a finalist for Offensive Player of the Year each of the last 2 years. Down season this year, didn't even get to 1,000 yards this year. I wouldn't do it if I was the Chiefs. That ship has sailed, and I've turned off my lighthouse light. Like I'm not really interested in him docking in Port Kansas City ever again. Someone will pay him. Someone will give him a contract. I don't know that I would if I was running a team, because you're right. There's still something there. How good is he if he's not the fastest player in the league?
It's a good question. I think he has developed some legitimate receiver skills, but the speed has always been the separator. The speed is what has been made him, frankly, a future Hall of Famer. And if he loses a step, then he's a small receiver who's dealt with some injuries, starting to have the injuries pile up on him a little bit, and has never been particularly great at he's never gotten the grimy yards for you, though he's a tougher player than he gets credit for.
That's true.
I still think there's, again, if he's not the fastest guy in the league, he's still a useful piece. He's somebody you have to account for. He's somebody you can do a lot of things with because he's a good route runner. He's good at the point of the catch. He can go up in the air and win a contested catch. But his days of being I don't think you can, as a team, say, okay, we're going to build our entire offense around this guy, because that's what the Dolphins tried to do with Tyreek Hill in his prime. And what did that get him? Nothing.
Dan, can you name the 3 teams with the most cap space next year?
Not off the top of my head. I'm going to guess that the Patriots, I believe, are 1.
They are number 1, correct. And their investment, I'm calling it. If I'm wrong, hand up. It's going to be T. Higgins. They are going to go find a way to get T. Higgins.
If it were between those two right now at this point in their careers, I would choose Higgins over Hill as well.
Number 3, Spencer's Commanders. I don't know how they still have that much money, but they're 3rd. Number 2, I'm big circle around this one, knowing the family ownership, knowing the team, knowing everything about this franchise. The 2nd most cap space in the NFL next year belongs to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
Does old declining Tyreek Hill not sound like the ultimate 2025 Raider?
No, that's perfect. Yeah,
Antonio Pierce ain't going to care about the off-field stuff.
No, and if there's anything the Davis family has loved over the years, it's the super fast wide receiver. And you see the vision, right? He's going to open up the field for Brock Bowers and help out whoever we end up with a quarterback. You can see the vision there. That does make a lot of sense. Print the jerseys.
Let's get to yeah, right. Real quick, couple of coaching things. I know you had one you wanted to get to. I just want to mention, so Mike McCarthy's contract expires in 8 days. His contract is up on the 14th. The Cowboys haven't really started negotiations, no matter what Jerry Jones is saying. They haven't actually started talking to him. And if we hit the 14th, he's a free agent. He can go anywhere, back to Dallas or anywhere. The first team to put in a request to interview Mike McCarthy is the Chicago Bears. And I cannot tell you how impossibly funny it would be for former Green Bay Packers Super Bowl winning head coach Mike McCarthy to go to Chicago, given what everybody thinks about Mike McCarthy and why the Packers won that Super Bowl. It would be hysterical. And I like Mike McCarthy. He's a good coach, but that's kind of where it tops out. Hilarious. That's my funniest coaching anecdote of the day.
I think that Mike McCarthy is a good coach who's been passed by. His offense has been outmoded a little bit.
Brian Schottenheimer is his offensive coordinator, man. What are we doing?
I don't think I don't think that's a great fit for Caleb Williams. I don't think that would be the guy that I would want to see in Chicago. A couple of other notes. Apparently, it's going to be retread season in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
It's retread season in college football. It's going to be retread season in the NFL, too. The Jets have made overtures. They want to interview Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Broncos. They want to interview Matt Nagy. They've reached out to the Chiefs and asked for permission to interview Matt Nagy. Rex Ryan would crawl on his hands and knees from Bristol, Connecticut to Florham Park to be the Jets head coach again. Maybe that's who they end up with. I don't know. But one coach who won't go there is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions, who has reportedly, through his representation, told the Jets, yeah, lose my phone number. And that's hilarious. That's so funny to me. One other coaching note I had to mention before we got out of here. The Seahawks parted ways with their offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, after one season. Go back to college. Good riddance. You will not be missed.
More like Ryan Scrub.
I'm going to show up at his funeral just to make sure he's dead. Miserable year running the offense in Seattle, even though they won 10 games. Miserable season. Lou Anarumo, defensive coordinator of the Bengals, also got fired today. We should bring that up too. Lou Anarumo is the one defensive coordinator in the league who gets credit for mastering Patrick Mahomes, or at least giving Patrick Mahomes grief with some of the things that he's been able to scheme up in his time as the defensive coordinator of the Bengals. The Bengals defense stunk this year. I think it was more of an issue of personnel and not the coach, but somebody had to be held accountable. That somebody was Lou Anarumo. I got to imagine he'll have a job in like 0.2 seconds. I don't think it'll be as a head coach, but somebody's getting a hell of a defensive coordinator next year.
No, I agree with you. I do think someone's going to hire him right away. I get it, but I wouldn't have done it. We should also add, they fired their offensive line coach, their linebackers coach, and their defensive line coach, along with Lou Anarumo. Have you seen the talent they have or lack thereof at linebacker and defensive line? I mean, you had Trey Hendrickson, and that was it. Like, they've got, and Jermaine Pratt's a good player too at linebacker, but like, they don't have anybody. There's nothing there. What he's trying to build brick without straw. I mean, it was a bad setup. He was set up to fail with that lack of talent, and someone's going to get a good coordinator.
Yeah, was really surprised to see that news today. That's probably the most eyebrow-raising coaching transaction, I think, of the last 24 hours. Lou Anarumo let go in Cincinnati. We'll take one final break here on the program. We'll come back with a final word. One quick programming note before we take this break. No Chiefs Kingdom show tonight. Typically, you would hear the Chiefs Kingdom at 6 o'clock on this station on the Chiefs Radio Network. That show has been canceled for tonight. Also, the Jeff Mitty show was canceled tonight as well. So no shoulder sports programming tonight. We're going to go right to Dave Ramsey when we're done here, which we will be after the final word in just a bit on 580 Sports Talk. Wrap it up and walk it off this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk with a final word. Brendan Wierzinski, you're first up.
All right, final word for me is that this Chiefs game this weekend was a farce, and I'm sorry that I wasted any amount of my time watching it. I'm glad I was originally mad KU was playing on a Sunday. I'm actually so glad KU played on a Sunday, so I could enjoy that instead of having to watch the Chiefs play a fake fantasy football game. It was ridiculous and bad. I'm glad the playoffs are here.
Final word for me. We broke some Royals news at the top of this hour. Royals reuniting with Michael Lorenzen on a one-year deal with a mutual option for a second year, and I really like it. The Royals continuing to build out their pitching depth and bring back a guy who was really turning a corner and pitching about as well as he had for a stretch in his entire career before the hamstring injury last year. You can never have too many credible starting pitchers. Royals add another with Michael Lorenzen, and I sneakily like that Kevin Biggio minor league deal, too. I think he's going to be on the roster next season. We'll be back in studio tomorrow. Matt Verderam will join us, as will Michael Swain of Fog.net. We'll have plenty more NFL and more to talk about on tomorrow's show. For Brendan Wierzinski, I'm Dan Lucero. This was 580 Sports Talk. Have a great rest of your day.